Okay. Everything ready.
So today's date is July 7th, 2021, and my name is Alexandra Chichelonfloro. I am one of the oral history archivist here, and today I am interviewing
Beatriz Andrekovich.
And this is the first interview from the Oral History Drive that we start with in cooperation with the nonprofit that Beatriz represents here today. Do you want to tell me what the nonprofit is?
Yes, the nonprofit represents art and culture. Its name is HAPBWA, and the name stands for the letters of what it represents. So in Spanish, it will be Casa, House of Art, Arte, Bienestar, well-being, Education, that's Educacion, Tourism, it's tourism of any country. Then it has another C for culture, so Ka, and then an A for Artesania, which is inside of art, what is particularly from your country, that is made by people in your country, but it's not a craft, it's the art from your country. And then the L for literature, so that's why it's HAPBWA. But I usually say, the nonprofit presented by Beatriz Andrekovich.
That's a really good. I mean, this name gets so much of it into itself.
And it represents what I like to do. That's why I like to do all of that. So I put it together and form a name that represents what I like to work with. And it's not necessarily for Mexico. It can be for any other country. But usually I try to do things for Mexico since that is my country, or for other Latin countries when I meet people from other Latin countries and I support what they're doing. And I do that through different organizations.
Thank you very much for introducing. I forgot. I will keep looking at it, but don't feel I am always listening. I just want to make sure that we don't have any technological problems
That's
here.
okay.
I think that everything is recording over there too. So to start off, can you tell me when and where were you born?
Yes, I won't say the date of birth. I'll just say the month and day. So
Okay.
yes, we believe that women don't say their age. So no, it's October 18, and I was born in Mexico City, Mexico. And I was born and raised in Mexico. So I went to school in Mexico. My school happened to be bilingual because my parents thought that we should learn English as it was the country next door. So we started English since we were in kindergarten, except that we didn't have a big opportunity to practice, and that's why I still have my accent. But we learned it since we were little, and I believe that children can learn as many languages as they can, along with music or literature or sports. The brain is amazing. The brain can do so many things. So we just learned English, and then we were encouraged to learn other languages. So it was Italian or French or German or Russian. We just were encouraged to learn languages, and usually you learn the language of what is in your ancestry, of any of the family members that you still have with you or that you want to explore, a culture that you want to explore. So maybe you're not Japanese in any way, but you want to learn Japanese, so then learn Japanese. And you're encouraged to do so, and you find the places to do so. Or if you're into art, you find the places to do so. In that sense, in Mexico, learning languages or learning art or dancing or sports, it's affordable. Now, if you want to go professional, then it's very different. I find that here in the States, there are many supports for you, like to go to Olympic Games, but in Mexico, we don't have all that support. But if you just want to explore it and practice it, there are many things that you can do, and you're encouraged to do so.
So what did you do?
Well,
just tell me about growing up in Mexico.
So when I grew up, my parents were very much into nature and education, and they liked the arts, and we were encouraged to study. And that's because my father's mother believed that as women we should study and we should be all we could be, which is not typical to find of somebody at that age. But she believed that in life, if you are presented with challenges, let's say you get married and your husband dies or you get divorced, you need to have a way out. And if you have a talent, you should be able to explore it. And you could become somebody really good. It could be as an architect, as a doctor, or singing, or acting, or sewing, just to be the best you could be in whatever talent that you had, and that you should be able to explore it. And the same time, my parents were very traditional, so it was a very conservative household, but we were allowed to educate ourselves. It's just like I never went out by myself, you know. It was just a contrast in that sense. Be all you can be, but be very careful of who you are, and remind yourself what society you are in. Meaning that as a girl, you do not go out by yourself, you walk by yourself, and you are part of a family. That's the way we grew up. It's part of a enlarged family. So my school had Spanish and English, so I studied both languages. I like, let's say, to draw. I like to write poems. I like the arts. So since I was a little girl, I wanted to dance. So I learned dancing, folkloric dancing. I also wanted to do ballet. Since I was a little girl, you know, after school, I would go to ballet classes. My parents believed you had to play the piano. So that I wasn't able to choose what I wanted to play. I remember I had to play Tchaikovsky. So we played the piano. I wasn't very good at singing, so I didn't sing, but I wanted to. And I would say, today, I would go back in time and encourage myself to sing. Because if you're not good through practice, you can at least do well instead of not singing at all. Because as you grow up, your chords mature and it becomes a little harder. And that's why learning other languages or singing should be encouraged when you're a little kid before your chords finish forming. So I wish I had sang more. I like to paint. I like the arts. I like the arts very much. I didn't want to be into theater. But I just wanted to dance, and that's what I did mostly. And I painted and I drew. I played the piano. I liked sports. I didn't like group sports. What I liked was, except for volleyball, which we did in school that I enjoyed, but I liked the one-on-one. So I like to play tennis. I like to swim. And again, my parents encouraged us to do so, and they encouraged us to enjoy nature. So on Saturdays and Sundays, we would go to a club, like a country club, to play the sports, to be with family, to be with friends. I remember the country club also had a movie, so we would watch movies, the typical Disney movies as a family. The movies were in English. You could watch movies translated, but my parents wanted us to listen to the movie in English to practice. They still had subtitles in Spanish in case you miss words. And I swam, I played tennis, and then we would go somewhere to explore nature. So we will go to the mountains. You just get out of Mexico City and go explore the mountains and walk around in nature. And I had allergies, but I took my medicine, but it helps to be outside in nature to help you with your allergies. You know, to walk barefoot, to be in the sand, to be in the ocean, to be in a lake. So we did that, and therefore I think we grew up very healthy in that sense, because you're in touch with nature. And we also like museums. My parents always took us to different museums. We went to church on Sundays. And I believe that as a child, you learn to go to a restaurant, you learn to go to church, you learn to go to a museum by going. You know, you learn the proper behavior, how to appreciate, like not go, oh, that person's like a kid. No, you learn, I mean, your parents are not going to show you that at a certain age, but when you're able to see it, you have respect for it. You're not going to, you have respect. You know, you go to a restaurant, you're not looking at people laughing at the way they're dressed or eating. You learn respect for others. And so my parents encourage us to meet other people. Many people are from different places. You know, there's a stereotype that would all look the same. We're not. We came from many different countries, European countries, many years before the United States was even formed. I mean, Mexico was first conquered by Spain in 1521, so people have been coming for a long time from many different countries. Indigenous groups are all very different. So Indians even themselves do not look the same. And we use the word Indians wrongly because people thought they were in India, you know, when the Spanish came, but they were not. They're really indigenous groups. And then black people were brought from Africa also to all Latin countries, including Mexico. So we also have black people. And then we have different groups of Spanish people, Italian people, French people, German people, Russian people, Irish, Lebanese, Jewish. So there are so many groups of people that came from different countries. And in the beginning, maybe they were separated, but little by little, the children meet each other and become friends. So little by little, the families, in the different groups integrate. And that's what happened to Mexico too. So we learned to have respect for people from different cultures, races, even religions. Mexico is a Catholic country, but it was not always very Catholic. We had a government once that wanted to get rid of Catholicism, and we had to practice like hidden in the 1920s, 1930s, but then it opened again through pressure from people mainly, not only the church, but the pressure of people to believe in God, to practice religion. But that made us more open to respect others. So let's say when Jewish people came into Mexico City, we respect that they practice a religion. Not that Muslim people have come into our country, we respect the right to practice religion. So in that sense, Mexico's always had like the open door when you say, my house is your house. We truly do that. We try to respect other groups, and we just ask that they respect at the same time us. But us, we are made of different people too. There's not one me or one us. So we understand the diversity and inclusion. And as you travel through the country, it's not always the same. Different groups establish themselves in different places. Just like the United States, not all Italians came to the same place. Not all Irish came to the same place. Even not all Polish people came to the same place. The same thing happened in Mexico. Different groups established themselves in different states, were divided in states. And therefore the food or the art, the architecture, the traditional dresses look different. They're not the same in every place. But we learn to have respect for that and to enjoy learning about that. Our linear geography, as we were able to travel around states, not all states have the same geography. Same, I compare to the United States, because once you understand that even in this country, if you go to Texas, it's not the same as going to New York, it's not the same as going to Florida. Same thing in Mexico. If you go to the north, where you have beautiful deserts, it's not the same as going to the south of the country where you have the tropical forest, or the center where you have lots of beautiful mountains, or to the ocean and the coast. And the coast in the Pacific is not the same as the coast in the Atlantic. It's not the same as the Caribbean, and the peninsula of Yucatan. So every state is so different with its own beauty, and it's nice to explore it. And different indigenous people build different pyramids, which is very interesting in Mexico, because people always hear about Aztecs or Mayas, but there's so many different groups, so many that existed before or came at the same time. Where's the Toltecas, Chichimecas, Zapotecas, so many groups, and every state has the different, I'm going to call them pyramids, that they built, but they not always have the same shape or the same color, the same style, the languages. Even like I said, the indigenous group of those different places look totally different. And what's interesting also today is that they have found that they were in the American continent so long ago. It was believed that everybody came to the Strait of Bering about 13,000 years ago. And now through DNA, they have found DNA from Asia, from Africa, from 40,000 years ago. And it's also interesting because then when you look at the same pyramids and you travel to Asia, to Africa, and you see pyramids or you see ruins there, you start to see things that are alike. And then you understand why, because we came from there. In fact, what I'm wearing, this in Mexico, it's called arte huichol. The same with my earrings. If you went to Egypt, if you went to Nigeria, if you went to Colombia, you will see similar pieces. We go, why are they so similar? Well, because they all come from the same place, from Africa. And it's just so interesting to realize that, how the history has brought all of us little by little together, and that when we thought we were all so separated, we weren't. Somehow people from Africa, from Asia, crossed the ocean, came into the American continent, and shared and traded with everything they had. And that's what makes us today. In our DNA, we have so much richness of culture and art in us, and it's so nice to be able to explore it and to show it. Because when I have this piece, for instance, this is thousands and thousands years old, and I'm so happy that I'm still able to wear and show, and this is beautiful as always. So that's interesting. Yeah, so I'll show this flower. And I have like necklaces made of the same. We call these little pieces Shakira in Mexico. I don't know what they're called in other countries. And the art that is made, we call it huichol. And the huicholes are in the central part of Mexico. Spanish people divided into states, but back then the regions were different. And that's the same with my earrings. See, so I'll show that earring. I like to wear bright colors. And somehow it seems that we Latin people grow with bright colors and like bright colors. And even though the weather's not always bright and sunny or with rain or with fruit and vegetables of every color, that's usually what we're identified with. And most of our countries, Latin countries, are not up north in the world, in planet Earth. We're more or less, from the center down. So yes, many times our weather can be sunny, but not always. We get winters too. I mean, it does snow in Mexico and Chile, in all these countries. People are surprised that, oh, you do have snow? Yes, we have snow, even in Mexico. Outside the Mexico City in the mountains, I once took a friend from Canada, and he was so surprised to see snow in the mountains. Like, yes, we do have snow and ice too. It's not always just sunny or hot. Depends where you live and the geographical location. The weather may not always be sunny. It could be cold, or not always humid. It could be dry.
It's like people get surprised that Poland is hot in summer. I'm like, what did you think? It's like we have all 4 seasons, very hot summers. They have like over 90 degrees right now. So yeah. People, I guess, don't have they think, okay, Mexico hot, always hot, no snow. Poland cold, no sun.
Yeah.
It's not true. So with all that diversity, did you ever explore your family roots, where your family came from, or what kind of ethnic background your family has? Did you ever go deep into genealogy of your family?
I haven't done that, and I wanted to do it with the DNA. I mean, I know in general, because we all know that we came from somewhere. It's just that when you're born in Mexico, you become Mexican and you try to know Mexico. So I don't look at Spain, I'm not Spanish, I don't look at Spain as my mother country, no. But I know in my ancestry, I have Spanish, I know I have French, I know I have Italian, just because of asking my parents, where did our family come from? And because of that, of course, I wanted to go to Italy, I wanted to go to France, and I wanted to learn French, and I wanted to learn Italian, and I did. But when I was in those countries, it's not like I was like, oh, now I know where I came from. No, I remember that I stood there, in Spain, in Italy, in France. And to tell you the truth, all of them are similar. They're not as different as, let's say, with Japan. All these countries are kind of similar that you could belong. I feel like I could belong to any of them, but I know I'm from Mexico. That when I feel the happiest is when I hear my music, when I hear things from Mexico, because that's where I grew up. So that's what I identify with. Let's say with my children here, they identify more with the United States because that's where they're growing. So even though they love their ancestry, and then I tell them everything I can from Mexico, that's not their country. So I understand that, with myself, I am from Mexico, but Mexico means a lot. It means a lot of diversity, it means a lot of roots, it means so many different things. And I guess you explored the part that maybe your family belongs to, but there are people in Mexico, let's say from Germany, so they will explore their German roots. I haven't. I did go to Germany, but I never even thought, oh, maybe there's somebody from Germany in my family. But I do want to do the DNA test, because sometimes we don't know. We don't know who could be back in time. What I do know is whomever was in my ancestry must have liked art and culture, because I like it, and I know that a lot of the things that we like, that we may feel it's me, yes, it's you, but it's in your family. It's in your DNA. And that's why, yes, exploring where your family came from is interesting, because it kind of affirms that the things you like, there's a reason why you like them. I like nature and flowers so much. And I remember long time ago, my father showed me a postcard from his own father. And he was so happy, his father, to see in Washington, D.C., he was able to see, I forgot the word, where you have all the plants. Oh, I forgot the word. where you keep them like inside of glass house,
Oh.
an invernadero, but in English, like a greenhouse.
Green.
So there was a greenhouse, and he was so happy to see it. And I'm looking at the postcard thinking, oh my, I like that too so much. And then you realize, wow, it's so interesting how things from your family pass to you. And that means that there's so much in you that you can do. Like when people say, I don't have a talent, I'm like, maybe you haven't explored it, or you haven't identified it or found it, but you do. And in fact, you don't have one. You have many. There's so much inside of us. And that's why I tell my kids, that's why it's so important when you go to school that you explore as much as you can. And if school doesn't give it to you, explore it after school. Because it's hard to know what you like sometimes without knowing it. That you kind of have to give it some education, but you would be amazed as you explore different things to see what calls you, and then to realize that it's in you and you have a natural talent for it. But to me, you still have to educate it a little bit, even if you have that natural talent, to refine it. But it's just so interesting to find that it's in you, and that there's so much in you and in your brain, that our brains are so capable of doing so much.
That's true.
And that we have to share. And that's another thing that I believe. And in the Bible, when God gives you talents, if you hide them, they don't multiply. So I also believe that when you find those talents, you identify those talents, that you just don't take them with you and they die with you, that you kind of share them, that you pass them along to your family, that you share them with others, because as talents from different people come together, you can build something even richer, more interesting, with all those talents that came together. And it doesn't have to necessarily be with your family, because you don't have your family with you. It can be with friends. And not necessarily from your country, it can be with other countries. And little by little, you realize that going outside of your country, let's say you and I from different countries, we will find so many things that are alike. And so those talents can even expand. And I can meet somebody from Japan and go, and it expands. And somebody from Russia, and it expands. And it's just so interesting, because you start to realize how with people from different countries, different races, different everything from around the world, you start to connect in so many ways through those talents, through art and culture. It really is a ways to come together.
That's very true. So, one more question about your family. What did your parents do for a living?
Oh, my dad was an attorney, and my mom was an accountant. And they believe, like I said, very much in education and in helping the community. My parents were always very involved in the community and doing for the community. So I have to say that many things that I do, that I get involved in the community, it's because I was raised that way. I always understood that we were part of a community, and that you have to, wherever you are, because we call it your community, but if I move somewhere else, that becomes my community, that you give your best to that community, because it benefits everybody in your community and it comes back to you. So you're really being worked with the community to do better. And that I received from my parents and my extended family, because I was very lucky to have many uncles and aunts, which I'm sad that my children don't, because they do make an impact in the way you grow up, that you learn so many things from your uncles, from your aunts, from your cousins. My dad was born in Mexico City, but his family came from the north, from Texas, and then the United States invaded, so they killed many people, and my family had to escape to go into Texas and to the state of Jalisco. So I had family in those two states. And my mom, the same thing, part of her family was from the state of Jalisco, and part of her family was from the state of Mexico. My mom was living in the state of Jalisco when my dad met her, but she moved to Mexico City. We did not grow up initially in Mexico City. We grew up in the state of Morelos, that is next to Mexico City. It's called the state of the eternal spring, because it's very sunny. The weather is very nice, never too hot, never cold, and it's very pretty, full of flowers. But when it was time to go to school, my dad wanted us to go to bilingual school, so that's why we moved to Mexico City. But my father always worked in Mexico City, so when we were living in Cuernavaca, in Morelos, he had to drive back and forth. And my dad somehow enjoyed driving because it was a lot of curves and he loved them. He loved motorcycles and cars, so I guess he enjoyed that drive because it wasn't an easy drive. Once we were living in Mexico City, we went every weekend to Cuernavaca, and I realized his sacrifice, of driving, because it took a while to get there, a while to come back. I mean, not as long, but I mean, it took at least an hour and a half. And so you realize, sometimes what your parents do for you. Next thing with going to the beach, my father loved going to the ocean, my mom too, but especially my dad, he swam everywhere in Acapulco in the bay. I was always scared of sharks. I was like, oh, just in the shallow part. And sailing, he just loves the water sports. And so we would then go from Cuernavaca to Acapulco. I mean, yes, we do have the better highways, but my dad usually liked to drive in the old highways because you would see like the way that before there were cars, that the carts with horses used to take. You would see more nature, so we'll take those always that took time. And you learn to enjoy the way there, because it could take 4 hours to get there, to enjoy the time there, being in the ocean in Acapulco, and then to enjoy the drive back. And sometimes they tell it's not only where you go, like enjoy the weather, enjoy the drive. And we did. And we would stop in different places and get to see, the trees, the forests, the flowers, the little towns. And it affects you, I think, growing up. It makes a difference to you to know, the city, how different it is from a little town, the people. Everybody tends to be very nice. Yes, you have to be careful of places, with thieves or not being alone. But in general, I would say that people are always so nice to eat different kinds of food. And whether you're in a nice table or in a nice restaurant, we learn to sit on the floor and eat on the floor or sit on a piece of wood, whatever somebody was making right there. So we enjoyed eating from everybody, anywhere. And I think that's very important to prepare you in life. Because life is not always going to be roses. You may have to go through hardships, but if you have learned to be flexible since you were a child or how to go through hardships, it helps you. And it makes it easier, I think, because when you're a child, you don't question as much. You learn to live with it, to overcome it. And so when you're an adult, I think you already have that experience that yes, it's going to be hard, but I will overcome it. I will go through it, and I will be flexible. If I have the 7 years of fat cows, I will enjoy them. But I may have 7 years of thin cows. I mean, that's a verse from the Bible. That you may have to be lean sometimes, and sometimes you may have steak. And you will go through both times in your life, and you will enjoy both. Because in both cases, it will not be all of that. They will be good and bad together. And so when we were growing up, it's not that everything was perfect. No, there are always challenges. But I think you learn to appreciate the learnings and experience of what makes you a better person or a stronger person, and enjoy what you have at that time. And in my case, it made me appreciate nature, my family, the arts, because you would see what everybody was wearing or making. I love acrylic dresses. So I always wanted to have them and dance with them or model them. I just knew that I liked the textiles and the colors. I just enjoyed that very much. It was just part of how we grew up. I went to school, all my school, to the same school, Colegio Columbia. And I thought I was going to study in Mexico, but I had very good grades and I won a scholarship. And it was hard for me, we're talking about the different talents, to choose what am I going to study. It's not that I didn't know, there's so many things that I wanted that I liked. It was like, how am I going to choose? But I guess, you as God, life provides, because I came to college in Pennsylvania. I didn't realize the weather. We didn't have Google Maps and everything, all the information we have ready today. I mean, a phone is like such a big computer in your hands with so much information. So I wanted to be in two places at the same time. So I looked at the map and I thought, if I go to the border between the United States and Canada, I'm going to be in both countries. I mean, I didn't realize the cold weather, I guess. So that's where I came, that I thought, Pennsylvania is perfect. I'll be in both places. Yes, I enjoyed the cold weather because again, I had to think I must enjoy this and experience, but I don't think I'm made to live in the snow because I didn't grow up with it. And again, that makes you who you are, but I enjoy being in the snow. I try to learn to ski. I enjoy nature. I love the autumn being red and yellow, the colors of the autumn. That was so beautiful. And I took advantage of being in the States and in Canada. So I tried to travel as much as possible to Toronto, to Quebec, to Montreal, to practice my French. And I wanted to study. So I did my sports, I like to swim, I like to go rafting, I like to play tennis, but I also wanted to study as much as possible. And I realized that sadly, as an artist, it is hard to make a living. But I was very good with numbers. So I decided to study finance. So I finished studying finance because I came from a very good private school. I was able to take some classes. I just did the test and I passed them to finish faster. So I was able to finish finance faster. So I chose then to do business administration. And because they're in the same, let's say school, I was able to finish it fast too. And I was always taking art classes because I like it. And so the dean called me and said, why don't you just finish taking the few classes you're missing and have another major in art? And then have a minor in French since you're taking all these classes. So I did. So I finished art and humanities too. And I did my minor in French. And if I had had more time, I would have finished political science too because I took classes in political science. I just enjoyed studying. And I had very good teachers. And I had teachers who came from different countries. Open your world. Since I was in school, the librarian, we had a library in our school, opened her eyesight by sharing with us her pictures. She used to travel to many countries, and she put that seed in us to travel, to see the world, to know that there was another world outside of our world. And when I was in college, and I had all these teachers from so many different countries, it just also opened, my world to appreciate and see so many other countries through their eyes. And then we also had many foreign students. And to me, that was a treasure. To be able to talk to all the foreign students, to share their food, to see their clothing, to know about their art. And so we organized a foreign student association and I became the president. Like I said, I just like that. And we organized presentations, exhibits. Since we were so few from each country, I learned to dance like with my friends from Egypt and I danced with them. And then my friends from Venezuela and I danced with them. And my friends from Russia and I danced with them. So I danced with everybody. And I was just so happy to learn, the different ways also of each one of them. And I'm saying the ways because let's say when I was with my friends from Egypt and we went to eat, they separated men from women. And so, I had to cover myself and I had to be separated when I was with them and respect that, which didn't happen maybe when I was with other friends. And that was just so interesting. So I knew that wherever I wanted to go or work, I was going to continue to explore the arts and meet different people. When I graduated, I moved back to Mexico. That's where I wanted to work. Citibank interviewed me a year before I was done, so I went back to Mexico. And I was between working for Procter & Gamble and Citibank. I decided to work with Citibank. And I traveled to many places with Citibank, mainly in the American continent. I came to the United States. I went to Canada too, and I went to most Central and South American countries. And I enjoy it. I mean, it was not only working, because I was able to explore. To me, if I had 1 hour to explore, I explored for 1 hour. Even if I had 1 hour in a museum, 1 hour in a museum was better than no hour in a museum. So I just tried to see as much as possible for whatever place they send me and meet people from everywhere and relate to everybody and learn from them and then share whatever I could. And that's how I continue to work and explore and meet people. And back in Pennsylvania, when I was in college, I had a friend, who was my husband today. We had never dated because, to tell you the truth, I wasn't interested. I wanted to study. And the way I was raised was different from the way the other students were around me. So I wasn't interested at that moment in their ways, and maybe they were not interested in my ways. I was much more conservative in college, so I was like, no, I this is what I want to do. And I didn't want to marry young. I want to be able to study, and a lot of people were drinking. I wasn't interested in that, and that's what I know. Not everybody's the same. You cannot stereotypes. I have many friends from the United States who were not like that, but most of the guys I met in college were like that. So I was like, I'm not interested. And even my husband today was more like that. I was like, I'm not interested. But through life, we were in contact because we were friends. We wrote a lot to each other. I had so many pen pals back then, we just, everybody, we just wrote to each other. And it's interesting, sometimes it could have taken months for a letter to arrive, but that's the way it was. Not today, like immediately, no. We just waited, and then we'll write another letter and wait. I wrote to my parents when I was in college. They wrote to me because phone calls were expensive. We're just used to writing. And so I wrote a lot to my husband, so we were very good pen pals. And then when we were able to travel, I would see him, or if he was able to travel to Mexico, he would see me. And eventually we realized that, we loved each other. So after 10 years of working for Citibank, I worked 1 year with Bank of Nova Scotia. And then my husband and I got married. And I didn't want a long distance marriage because we had a long distance relationship, and he couldn't find a job in Mexico. So I took a sabbatical year because it was very hard to say goodbye to everything. And we got married, and we lived first for 1 year in Pennsylvania. And I was like, definitely, it's too cold in the winter. It was too hot in the summer, and people just got used to it, but it was way too hot for me because Mexico City tends to be on the dry side, and I wanted more greenery, more flowers, bigger cities. So I kept asking my husband, let's move to North Carolina or South Carolina or Florida, and we eventually moved to Florida. And we moved to Fort Myers first, next to the beach, and I was very happy because I love nature. So my children, we had first a son and a daughter in Fort Myers, grew up going to the beach all the time with nature. I work part-time only because I wanted my children to have the same experience that I had, to be able to swim, to play tennis, to play the piano. And that is very hard when you have a full-time job. It is very hard. And I have a lot of respect for people who do it, because when you're a doctor, maybe you can't work part-time. There are certain maybe jobs where you cannot have the flexibility that I had with finance. And I understand that, and I have a lot of admiration for when we're able to juggle, a full-time job and do all this for children, because it's not easy. Or who have a wonderful husband where they're both partners to do all this, because it's not easy. And that's, then I realized, the sacrifices that my parents did, because, when my mother was taking to all these places, and she enjoyed it, but that meant she did all maybe other things that she wanted to do as well, and it was hard to do all of that. And I realized how hard it was at that moment for me to do all of that, especially because in Mexico it's easier to get somebody to help you and work for you in your house. It's very expensive here. It's not common, and that was hard because I had to do that too. So it wasn't simple, but I tried to do a little bit of everything because I wanted my children to have as many experiences as possible, with nature, with studying. And to me, it's never a question if you want to study. You have to study. That is what I'm giving you to you. It's a gift to give you education. I don't think I will ask you if you want $1 million. No, I will give it to you. And if you're not ready for it, I'll put in your savings account. But I'll give it to you. So I'll give you education. That's a great gift. So maybe you're too young to appreciate it, but I give it to you. And maybe I make it fun, and you realize that it's education, because playing is education. Going down the slide, being on the swings, everything you do that you may think is just playtime, it's helping your brain, to acquire all that and for your brain to grow. And you acquire education, social skills. So everything you do, even playing, helps you to grow. So I wanted to make sure that my children had, those experiences growing up. I wasn't able to move back to Mexico as much as I tried. We ended up staying here in Fort Myers, and that was very hard. I have to tell you that it's extremely hard. Many times people tell, aren't you glad you're here? And I didn't want to offend them, but I was like, I'm happy, I appreciate, I'm thankful, but I am Mexican. I prefer this with my family because I miss them very much, and my way of life. When you already have your family, your job, your friends, it's not easy. it's never easy to leave everything
Well,
behind.
you just had, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm
It was
getting
very hard.
emotional, but I've been here only for 5 years, and I'm here because I got married. There is no.
Oh, they're very similar.
Yeah, and just, I think it just this time, I don't know, with COVID and everything, I wasn't able to go back visit, and my parents weren't able to go back, you know. So just yesterday I had like this actual, like, you know, sometimes it just, like, you live your life and everything is normal, but then sometimes you like smell something that reminds you of home, or you hear a song, or you just think of something, and it just hits you so hard. And like yesterday, actually, I had, and I don't know, I wasn't even sad or anything. It's just like, I just imagined myself, you know, going home. And so now, like, when you talk about that, it touches my sensitive
Yes, it wasn't
part
easy.
very much. I very much understand that.
And you know, we're the country next door. I mean, it's not cheap to go, you know, and you need to know where to stay and food and everything. But at least we can visit. At least I was able, we always went once a year to Pennsylvania. And I was very blessed because not everybody can go back. And when you think of families that had to leave their hometown, they could not go back. That was so hard. And yes, you're thankful of finding a new country with many opportunities, but you can never forget where you came from and that you are attached to that, to your country, that this is your second house, but you have a first house. And then you have your family there, your friends, your food, and it's not entirely, you cannot find that all here because you're in a different country and you make the most of it. But it wasn't easy. I mean, I have to tell you, it's not, it isn't. So I appreciate it very much, but yes, I do miss my country and everything that I left behind. It is a sacrifice, you know, when you leave everything because you got married, because it wasn't out of necessity. It was a big change. But I always try to be positive, make the best of it, make the best of opportunities. You know, it's like wherever you are, you grow. So start making relations, see what you can do, how you can help your community, how you're part of that community, encouraging others to be part of your community too. And then my husband got a better offer to work in Seminole County. And so we looked at Lake Mary because of the school system. And you know, it's very clear today that you can look to see if schools are A or B or C. What was different is that in Mexico, I was able to go to a private school. Here, you do have to earn much more to be able to send your kids to a private school. But public education it's available and it can be good. And I'm gonna say can because it's not the same everywhere. The same thing with stereotyping and generalizing is not good. That you are in a good school or a good county does not mean that every county in the state or in every state is going to be as good. So you do have to look into it, spend some time looking into to decide where to live. And that's how we made the decision to live in Seminole County, because we looked at the schools and we said, okay, let's go here because of the schools. However, we did not realize other things. What we didn't realize is that me being Mexican, I mean, I'm American by citizenship, and to us in Mexico, I'm American because I'm in the American continent. And that sometimes causes confusion. Ask me, are you American? Yes, I am, because I'm an American continent. But the American citizenship of this country, yes, I have it too, is that there are not many Latin people. When I moved, there were not that many Latin people, not even from Mexico, even from other countries, in Lake Mary, we're in Seminole County. So that was a little hard, because people were not used to other people like me. And even though, you know, physically, you may not know where I come from and I was the same color as them, in the way of thinking, we are not the same. Similar in many ways, because, you know, we all want the best for our families, a job, to relate, but we tend to be we talk a lot. We are full of energy. We kiss and go around, like, you know, all this energy. That's who we are. And so I had to be more like, because you are, like we said, you know, even with college, when I was talking of being with different groups, you are with different groups, and out of respect, you know, you have to see how the different groups behave to fit with each group, but you cannot forget who you are. So I realized, oh, I better like find other Latins to relate to, because I can go, hello everybody, and sit down like, you know, they were there. But I also need to be with somebody like me, like hi, 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 to each one of the people sitting around the table and talk like this and go, oh, and oh my gosh, look at your hair, and touch your hair, and oh, look at this, and touch your arm, which I was not able to do with the ladies I was surrounded by in Lake Mary. So that's why I started exploring, you know, Orange County to find more people from Latin countries, because it was not going to be necessarily from Mexico. I was like, let's see, from Colombia, from Venezuela, from El Salvador, from Cuba. Let's see whom else I can find to speak Spanish to, and to continue to relate more in the way we are, you know, more or less with the same ancestry. And that's what I did. So we have stayed in Lake Mary, living there. We had 2 more children, so then we had a total of 4. But we ended up staying in the same house there and just exploring around. That, I have to say, reminds me that when you're in Mexico, just in the city, I live in the northern part of the city, but we had to drive sometimes an hour and a half to go south to visit somebody within the city. So driving around to see friends and family for a long time, you know, for a long time in the car is not uncommon. And so here, I didn't have to move, you know what I mean, to have friends that live in Orange or to live in Osceola. You just learn to drive. And that way you can expand, you know, your friends to meet other people, and slowly, I mean, I know that you can say, well, your friends become your family, kind of, because my husband's family is in Pennsylvania, my family is in Mexico, so in that sense, we're alone here. So our friends are really our circle. And we have friends from different countries. And there, you know, realize it's not the color, it's who you relate to. Because you start to get along according to, you know, the way you are. Like, again, you know, I like to talk, I'm bubbly, so maybe the people I relate to are like that. But I guess that's just human nature, but they can be from any country. And I enjoy that. That, I have to say, I enjoy that. And I just have different groups of friends everywhere. And sometimes the different groups know each other, sometimes they don't, because they may be friends, like this group of friends may be more into the art, but this group of friends may be more into a certain project that we're doing for the community. But I have to say that I enjoy it, and I enjoy being able to meet so many people from different countries, especially in Orange, in Orlando, you know, in Lake Mary, and that my children have been able to have those experiences too. Because I just think it just makes you richer in your being, and also again opens that window to the rest of the world, because you really don't know where life is going to take you, and it could take you maybe to another country far away where you are because of a job, and it's good that you're already open to enjoying and experiencing everything that you are going to be presented with. So I like that.
So, do you remember what year did you move into Lake Mary?
Yes, I won't go back in time. In 1995 to 1996, we were in Pennsylvania. Then 1996 to 2003, we were in Fort Myers. And 2003 till today, we are in Lake Mary.
So that's quite a, 2003 is, what, 18 years? 18
Yes.
years.
And all that time, no matter where I have been, I immediately contact the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, or I explore organizations that had to do with art and culture, and got involved with them. So whether, again, I was in school, or I was in college, or I was living in Pennsylvania for the 1 year I was there, or I was in Fort Myers, or here, I've always been doing events and exhibitions that had to do with art and culture. Always, I enjoy it, so I try to do that. With finance, again, because of going part-time, I continue to do that. I would say until we moved here, I changed. I was working with the business and industry services, and I was with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Fort Myers. When we moved here in Lake Mary, I opened a school for languages. It didn't last long, because many times people think that they can learn a language in a year or two. You cannot. You cannot. But you see, you know, so many ads that learn a language in 2 weeks, or you can't. If you go to the country and you really just listen and talk in that language, yes, you will learn faster. But as a second language in your hometown, it takes longer. And I guess sometimes people don't realize it and can't have the commitment to study for many years to actually learn a language, just want to be exposed to it. So I exposed many people to different languages. But then I wanted to do more, not just languages. So I started to go more into exhibits, into events, into programs with the community. I realized that, at least in Lake Mary, many people really didn't know much about foreigners like me. Even though I had the American citizenship, but to them I was an alien. So I thought, it is good for my children who people were like, someone was like, who? And I was like, wow, we need more education, more exposure. So I started to get more involved with the PTA in the schools and with the Board of Education in programs to open up like people's minds that, we are all part of the community. This, not only the country, this is a continent of immigration. But just looking at this country, this is a country of immigration. We're just one more wave. Just like there was another wave from other country and then from another country before, and then other waves will come. But we are here to make a family, to work, to relate to you. It's not a threat. And again, by knowing each other, and I think through art and culture, it's a good instrument to meet each other and have respect for each other and relate to each other. Many times I was in a meeting and I wouldn't talk, so they couldn't hear my accent, and I heard things that were not good. A lot of discrimination. And so I realized, what can I do? And so I thought, get involved, and through sharing your experiences, through helping others, and knowing that children do not always think like their parents. Children, yes, they see you're a different color. They see you have an accent. They want to play with you. And so I knew that children will be the wave to bring us together. And so I got very involved again with the PTA in the schools and the SAC, and with the Board of Education and different programs they had for the community, for leadership, for volunteering, for Spanish, for art, for education, any projects they had, especially if they had any exhibits or any art and culture programs, I was involved. And I'm still doing that today. Even though my children have been out of school, out of elementary school, where you usually have, middle school and high school, the PTA, I've always been involved now with my younger ones. I'm still involved with that, and I have continued to be with the Board of Education in Seminole with their art and education programs. I'm still doing that, and also helping them raise money, because even with music, art and music, there are not many funds. So it really depends on the community to raise funds so children have art and music in schools. And again, lots and lots of respect and gratitude to teachers, because art and music teachers do amazing things with their time and without resources. And I have in that sense to tell parents and remind parents that many times when they think the school is providing or the government is providing, it's the teachers out of their own time, or it's the parents like me. I did so many festivals with no money, just with my time to give. And people thought, oh, she must be paid, or oh, she must work for them. No, we were just doing it to give to the community. Volunteer work is so important, and you need so many volunteers. Whether you think it's fair or not, you need that to raise a community. And so as parents, we got together maybe to put flowers in the school, to put plants in the school. People will go, oh, what a beautiful school. They must have money. How many times you had parents? And it doesn't have to be money. You can be a parent with no money, but you have flowers in your house because you like flowers, you like plants, and you bring that plant or that flower to the school and plant it, and it will grow. And it's an example to children that no, that talent does not come from money. It comes from your heart, from the talents that you have in you and that you can share, and you can make a school a better place. You can get together, organizations like Grow. I went with them to paint schools. Home Depot gave them the paint, and then all of us volunteers with Grow will go and paint the school and make it like a new school. You should see the faces of children looking at the playground painted. And that's because the people in Grow gave their heart for that project as volunteers to do that. Because somebody said, let's put flowers in the classroom. Let's give the teacher. In Lake Mary High School, We had parents that decided to beautify the cafeteria for the teachers to make it beautiful, to give back to the teachers. I did with Lake Mary High School, the Mr. and Miss Lake Mary, which was wonderful. You know, I give to kids in high school because that's when my older children were in high school, to teach them debate, how to talk, how to walk, how to present themselves. We got them dresses back then from David's that had all the gowns. And thank you again all those years to this, because they allowed us to borrow the dresses. They allowed us to borrow in the men's clothing. And because I can't remember, I should, and I have to say thank you, because it was across from Davis that let us use the tuxedos for the kids in high school to learn how to wear them. And I know that impacted those students so much, and it was just such a big gift. You know, and it took thousands of hours, you know, to prepare all that. But to me, it's things that you give, and that makes a difference in their lives. And they will, at the same time, do something for others. And that's how I think you pass it from one generation to the other. So yes, I have seen, even in Longwood, that is in Seminole County, there's a shelter and there is a clinic. And a lot of the doctors there, even the guard, or the person that is in the desk, you know, taking appointments, everybody who works there is a volunteer. Do you know how many thousands and thousands of hours that is? And that is for the community. And that's what I mean, in that sense, yes, you know, we're talking about our second house, that we miss our first house, but yes, you have to look at your second house and appreciate the opportunities and what is given to you and say thank you. Yes, I have my first house in my heart, I'll never forget it, but wow, this country gives you so many opportunities, so much that I'm so thankful for. And even if I don't need it or use it in that moment, to pass information to somebody else, you know, that needs it and may not know about it. And again, that's what makes all of us in a community know each other. When I was growing up, walking down to go to church, we always walked. There was maybe 15 blocks to go to church. I wish I could do that here. All the way walking to church was saying hi to everybody. You know, that's so special that everybody knew everybody. So everybody took care of everybody. Everybody protect everybody. That made a safer community. I wish I could do that here, where I could walk to church and say hi to everybody on the way there, so we all know each other. In fact, I have to tell you that where we live, we stay there and we chose that place because I saw that. We happened to move in May, and they had this get together for the community, and everybody was outside their house sharing food and talking, and I liked that so much. I was like, honey, this is the community we want to live in. For Halloween, we don't knock on the door for somebody to come out. Yes, some people do that, but usually the people are outside their house in their chairs having a drink with the candy, and everybody's talking to everybody. It's a chance to meet your neighbors. Everybody has their dogs or their cats. My children were more interested in petting the dogs and the cats than in the candy. And me, I was more interested in meeting my neighbors. That was so nice. And that reminded me, you know, walking to church and saying hi to everybody. It was like, this is what makes a community. You know, because when you go to church, we knew everybody. And that was one of the differences that was different here, is that after church we're like, okay, the blessing, go home. And I was like, when do we meet everybody? I want to meet the other people in church. But again, it's just personality. Like we Latins, yes, we will start meeting everybody and talking, but not everybody's like that, and you have to have respect for that. But again, then you look around, and I was like, okay, I'm going to explore then where I meet other Latins in my church. And so in our case, we go to Mary Magdalene, a Catholic church in Maitland, because that's where I met other Latins, where I feel comfortable that I can be talking. And that's what they're going to say, oh, the Latin people who talk a lot. They're going to be like me, and we can all talk a lot together. And share all the things that we like, and talk about things that, you know, that we like and that we share. And again, meet other people, because it doesn't mean that everybody's going to be the same. And then you get to meet them too. And so you enjoy your second house where you meet other people, have other relationships, other experiences, but you have your first house needs where you are who you are till the end, where I can speak Spanish and relate with others. in the way that I normally do, that who I am. And that's what I do with organizations too, which I haven't mentioned in as I find organizations. That's what I try to do, then share my Mexico. And I'm saying my Mexico because my Mexico may not be the same as the Mexico of somebody else. It's where you grew up, how you grew up, what you like, what you were exposed to. So I share what I can. I cannot represent my whole country, just like nobody could represent the whole United States. No, you represent your part. And to me, that part is already a little part of a big something that I give to you with love. And it opens a window or the door to you to explore more. But at least I give you a little bit. And that's why I feel that I'm just giving you a little because there's so much more. But I give you a little bit of what I know from Mexico that I can share from Mexico to open the heart that oh, it's a country next door. There are people like me, no matter how much money they have, no matter what they look like, let's meet them. And because whatever job they do, whether they're an engineer or a doctor, or they pick up garbage, or they're growing the plants and vegetables, it's part of society. It's part of your community and it's needed. Because in every society, in every community, you must have everybody that does that. And even if you have not gone to every country around the world, every country has that. In every country, you have to have all those layers in society, in the community. So you have to have them here and appreciate the people that do that in every part of the community and society and meet them and treat them with respect and be thankful because everything is needed in your community. And so my little part, where I share the art or the culture or who we are as people, I give you also to you with love. I appreciate what everybody else gives and then I give you my little portion. And so I have participated with different organizations where I can share that, the art and culture, and then learn from others. In that sense, like I was saying, in Seminole County, I have done that a lot with the different groups in the Board of Education. I have done that with the PTA, with the children's school. And there's not like an organization of Latin. I just have helped other people doing it. But like a Latin community, I have found that more in Orange County because I think we have more Latin people in Orange County. So let's see the group Tertulia Cuatro Gatos. They have more people living in Orange County, and even though they extend to Seminole through the public libraries into Osceola, very, very few people in the group live in Seminole. But at least we are part of it, and we try to share our love of books, of literature, of the art in its different ways, where it's dancing, theater, movies, reading, dancing, painting, sculptures, book writing, poem writing, and we do that in Spanish. And as people are learning English, I think it's important to practice your first language, to pass on your first language, because it's good to be bilingual or trilingual. It's good for the brain. So I do encourage children, yes, learn the language, and you don't know where it'll take you. Like in my case, I know that I was able to come to college in the United States and meet all these foreigners because I spoke English. I was able to work in Citibank because I could write. My grammar is better than my accent because I could write it. So yes, it opens worlds. I was able to work with Bank of Nova Scotia in Canada because of my French. So it does help you. And any other language, any experience that you have is part of where life can take you to take advantage of those opportunities. So that's what we encourage, that we speak Spanish and that we pass it to our children with Group Tertulia Cuatro Gatos. And then with Casa de Mexico, as you hear the word Mexico. Yes, because we try to share our experiences of Mexico with the purpose of inclusion and equity, that you see who we are, and that way we integrate. And that's better for the community, that we can know each other, respect each other, and meet different people, because when we do presentations, we give opportunities to others also to present. It's not just Mexico, we understand little by little, like my husband is from the States, we integrate, and so we incorporate that. I'm also with the group HAPBWA, that is a group for businesses of Hispanic women, because you may say, well, why a group of Hispanic if you're already part of the country? Because they may not know how to do it. When you come here, there are ways that everybody else may know because of living here, but when you just come, you don't know, and you need somebody to help you, to be your mentor, and then you become the mentor for somebody else. And that's what we do there. We try to help others who have just come or exploring, and also to let them know that yes, they can. Because many times, people feel like, oops, I can't, or I'm not able to, I'm not as good as. Again, everybody around the world has the talents, and you should never believe that because you have a different amount of money or a different color, you have different talents. The brain does not know color. The brain is all it can be, no matter what your shape or color looks like. You may have a very, very poor family with a child, and it sounds gross, but I say, with even boogers coming out, with no shoes. That little child, with education, can be the doctor, can discover the cure to cancer. Yes, it can happen, because it's the brain. And again, the brain doesn't know any of that, and that's why you have to give opportunities to everybody and look beyond, because nobody chooses where they're born. If you're born poor or rich or what color, nobody does that. You're just born, but your brain is the same computer as everybody else's. And sometimes our brains will go far, like if the children, and it doesn't follow money or color. And that's why education, again, is so important, and the experiences you have. So you are able to see that opportunity or that little brain in all these children that you have of different colors and different backgrounds, that you're able to recognize that and give that child all the education, all the opportunities, all the relationship, the experiences that they can have to be the best they can. And because that's, again, for the good of the community. Look at the United States, why it's so strong. With all the smartness that comes out of here. And I believe it's because you got the people from so many different countries coming here. So you didn't get stuck in one way. That's why I don't think there's one way of life. No, because you got so many ways coming together that you allow your brain to open in so many ways, to explore, to be creative in so many ways. And that's how you grow faster with technology, medicine, architecture, because it opens the window to so many other ways. And that's what's so interesting and so good. And that's why I encourage, as you see, they get passionate about that, because just like I have learned from others, yes, I want to pass it. And that's why I'm so thankful to every teacher that I had, or to every teacher that my children have been exposed to. Thank you to all those teachers, that taught my children and that went above and beyond their teaching to give them as much as they could. Because it clearly wasn't out of money. I have to say, teachers don't make money here. So it really is a love to teach and to pass along to others everything they can. And it's an honor, really. I consider it for us to be able to receive it. And the opportunity, I think that then whatever I receive, I can pass it along.
So I wanted to ask you, we talked about it a little bit here today, but also on the phone yesterday, that the Latin community is very diverse itself. People sometimes tend to think that it's just one Latin word, probably because of the language, because you do have that common, value, which is language. But it's a huge continent, so it's like, it's if somebody said, oh, Europeans, there's so many, we just don't have one common language in Europe, so maybe that's why it's easier for people to understand that we're different. But I can imagine that for the South American and Latin American, countries, it's kind of the same, like they're all different. It just, you have common language. So given all that, does it make it like more challenging, or maybe not? Like, is it, as a person who works for the community, is it easier or more difficult? Or if it is one or the other, what makes it easier or more difficult to work with the Latin community, given how diverse it is? I don't know if I'm phrasing the question.
Yes,
right,
no, and I think that's a very, very interesting question. I have to say, and that's what I love to teach and I have taught, in universities too, because I have a master's. I was able to teach more than 4 Myers in the Edison College, and that has changed its name. And It's interesting because it's a challenge and it follows stereotypes too. Many times, well, people, let's say with Mexico, look at me and say, you don't look Mexican. So it starts with teaching that wait, we're a very diverse country. Within the country, we're very diverse. We have many different groups. So whether I'm a black person or I'm an indigenous person, tall, short, with different looks, my nose can be different, my mouth, or whether I'm a European ascendant, I'm Mexican. Because it's a citizenship, not a look. So that's already a challenge, just looking at Mexico. And then you look at Colombia or Venezuela or Cuba or Chile, and you have the same. That there's a stereotype of people looking or acting, or even the way we talk, the same. So our accents are different in every country, and within the country the accent is different. Even though it's the same language, the accent in Spanish is different according to the state or the region. Let's say think Texas and New York. But also when you go to school, let's say you're a doctor, you will not talk the same as if you are a fisherman. And not that one is better than the other, but you don't talk the same. And that's the same in our countries. We all have very, very different accents, and we speak different. Then you have what we call in English idiomatic expressions. The way you say is like, this is cold, or if you talk about something, get out of here, you're not telling them to get out. It's just a way of talking. Or don't pull like my hair, don't pull my leg, expressions, or put some elbow into it. Then all the expressions are different inside the country, and then from one country to another. And sometimes expressions can be so different that they could be something normal in one country, but in another country could be even an insult. So you have to be careful also about the idiomatic expressions you use in every country. The accent can be so different that even if you learn Spanish in one place, you may not be able to understand somebody else because of the accent. So that already poses a challenge, like you say, that when you say Europe, every country is different, and because you have different languages, people understand you're different. Or say in Asia, that Russia, Japan, China, India are so different, and when you say Latin America, they pack us, or Hispanic. So I have even been asked about like a Hispanic restaurant. I'm like, that's like asking for a European restaurant. Maybe you say European store and you find goods from different countries. I'm like, no, because every country is different. And even though you may find things that are common, because most of our countries were conquered by Spain, so you may find rice in every single country, beans in every country. So there are things that you may find in all of us, but the food in each one of us is different, the art of each one is different, the way we think. Even now, again, we're all alike as human beings and we can relate, but there's always a way you think that you act that is different, that's more like your country than another, is different. So our traditional clothing, our countries, our architecture sometimes tends to look the same because it has a lot of Spanish and some French, where people came from. The main countries that came. In the case of Brazil, from Portugal, but the architecture is similar, colonial, but yes, every country is different. And so terms like Hispanic, I didn't use back in Mexico. We say, I'm Mexican, and some from Colombia says I'm Colombian, some from Venezuela says, I'm sure that you say I'm Polish, you don't say I'm European. So you're Polish, then you're European. So I am Mexican, and then I'm American from the American continent. I don't say I'm Hispanic or I'm North American. And even the Hispanic word, it's difficult. Because Latin comes from a Latin language, and it includes Brazil, meaning that you're Spanish or Portuguese or French and Italian are Latin languages. So when you say you're Latin, an Italian person is also Latin, a French person is also Latin, Romanians are also Latin because that's a Roman language, Brazil is also Latin, and sometimes they say here, no, I'm not Latin. They are Latin. Your language comes from a Latin root, so you are Latin. But it doesn't encompass everybody anyhow. Now, and I'll explain why. Hispanic, well, that leaves out Brazil because that means born in a country that speaks Spanish. Well, the country, what if you don't? There are groups of indigenous people in most of our countries where, because of how far away they may live from a city, they may do most of their even schooling in their own language, and they may have to learn Spanish because the government wants everybody to speak the same language, Spanish. So maybe they're taught Spanish in school, but the language they grow around with, that they talk to each other, may not be Spanish. There may be their indigenous language, which we're very happy, at least in Mexico, to keep. In many other countries, they have disappeared. But in Mexico, we have made an effort, not always, I have to say, not always. There have been times when people thought of, everybody speaks Spanish and that's it. But today, there's a big effort in keeping those languages. Same in Spain. Spain was made of kingdoms, and every single place had their own language besides Spain. There is an effort now, yes, you speak Spanish, but you also speak your own. It's not a variation of Spanish, it's your own language. And that happened to Italy too, where there used to be a group of kingdoms. So we're doing that, where we're trying to keep that. But that means, like, let's say a person of indigenous ancestry may not recognize being Hispanic, because that may not be their first or more important language. So even the term Hispanic, limits us. But again, I see that it's a term used to cover everybody, but it really doesn't. And it makes people think that it's like a bubble. And I'm like, no, we're divided by states. Other people may be divided by regions or by provinces, but there are always geographical divisions according to geography, to ways, to where people came from, many indigenous people, or where the different waves of European immigration came from. So no, it's very hard, like you said, it's not fair. And it's not fair also in the sense that you cannot choose one person. Let's say, oh, Beatriz, we're going to choose you to represent Hispanic. I don't even represent my country, not even my city, because it's so diverse. I cannot represent so many other countries. So no, it's unfair. And again, I think it's better. Again, yes, you can still be European, but I think it's better to always, give, and it's not credit, importance to what country you're from. So yes, I prefer to say Mexican than to say Hispanic. But Hispanic Heritage Month is called Hispanic Heritage Month. Even that remind people, we're not Hispanic just 1 month. Please give us opportunities the rest of the year, which goes by what you said, that even though we have a name, a word for it, or Latin, which is not Latinx, because Latin is not male or female, so there's no need to add anything. It already encompasses, like saying World X or American X. You don't need that. I don't know where that came from, but I was like, no, Latin or Hispanic. It encompasses everybody. With its limitations, like we say, that we're not just part of the year, which it's related to what you were asking me. So it's not explaining who you are and the stereotypes. Is that if you are part of a community, and that's what I do a lot for the community, I want to be representing the community. And so when I go to museums, for example, I don't see the community represented, and we're part of the community. And I feel, because at least in Lake Mary, I see many people from Japan and from India, I don't see their communities represented either. So I think that it's necessary to have these months when people say, well, why do you have a Hispanic month? Because we're not representing the community. Why do you have a group of Hispanic businesswomen? Because we're not representing the community. So we have to make that effort. So eventually we see ourselves as part of the community. I see festivals in Seminole County, in Sanford, and Lake Mary, and there's not even one Latin person dancing or singing or doing anything. At least in Castleberry, 25% of the population is, and so in their festivals, they always have somebody Latin. Well, it's the same as you go to other cities inside of Seminole. Why don't I see it represented? I come to Orange County, and I see different groups that don't even have one Latin person. I'm like, nobody else. If I was Indian, I wouldn't see one. Or if I was Japanese, I wouldn't. If I was from Nigeria, I don't. I see no diversity. I'm like, in Orange County, it's almost like the most diverse city in the United States, and you don't see that diversity in every organization. And I'm talking about art and culture, the things that you can see, like museums, because in hospitals, I understand it depends on the talent. You're not going to go and let me hire like a doctor from every country represented. Well, no, you're hiring the best doctors, or in an engineer company, the best engineers, and it really doesn't matter where they come from. Of course, you may need sometimes affirmative action to make sure that everybody's given an opportunity, because yes, it happens that by human nature, we do not give opportunities to everybody, and there may be people qualified that were not given an opportunity, and we have seen that happening. But let's say, going back to art and culture, that you're part of the community, that that there are artists, that are Latin or Chinese, or because you have met them, and you don't see them represented, and they're good, because it's not just that they exist, not that they're good, and you don't see them represented. And that's when I understand that yes, we sometimes may need throughout the year to put light on some groups to make sure that little by little we're all part of the community. And when we are all part of the community, eventually we won't need to highlight us in 1 month in particular, because we already belong, the whole year in it. But yes, I'm sure that challenge, that at least I'm talking about for Latin, again, as you meet people from different countries, you will hear that. I also belong to Fusion Fest with Terry Olsen. I help in every way, and therefore I have, remember, my love for families and people from all the world. And so I have met people from different communities, and I hear the same, the lack of representation in our community. I'm not going to say of different communities, of different ancestries or different places they came from, but they're not represented in the community. But the community really should be the one for everybody. And within your community, maybe you have subgroups of, maybe it's the same word, communities, but we all want to be able somehow to be represented in the whole. And so like when I go to Fusion Fest, which I enjoy, many people from different countries, we talk about that we still have to do that. And the 2 days that we're together in Fusion Fest at the end of November, we realize, why don't I see this the whole year, that we're all here, that we should be, I should be able to see that diversity that I see those 2 days throughout the year, because we're living here. And so maybe little by little through this, maybe like these interviews with the History Museum, we see that being part. Even in this museum, I'm here and I'm talking to you because I love coming to this museum, and I saw the beginning. And in the beginning, you have all the people that, indigenous people, and then they mentioned maybe the Quakers. I have studied them in school, but I learned more about them here. And as I covered the museum, I didn't see anything from the Spanish people, like zero. And I thought, before all these people came, the Spanish were here. Why aren't they mentioned? And today, we're not Spanish. Again, we're Mexican or Colombian. Our ancestry may be Spanish. We may speak Spanish, but just like you speak English, you're not English. We're not Spanish, but we're here. So where are we mentioned? And we have been here, in my case, for 27 years, but the people have been here longer. We're part of the history, and we don't see ourselves. And so I was asking, how can we be part of this? Because if somebody comes to this museum, let's say from another state or from another country, how can they understand who we are? And let's say not all of Florida, let's just mention Central Florida. How can they see what Central Florida is? How can they learn about Central Florida? Where is that history? It's nowhere. It really is nowhere. It's in pieces, here and there, all in pieces. And I think like these oral interviews are a ways to show this is who we are in Central Florida. It's a very diverse community, and show all the little pieces that that form. I forgot the word. Is it a puzzle? It's from the Casa in Spanish. When you put all the little mosaic, all the pieces that form the mosaic. And maybe this will be the way to little by little form it. And little by little, when somebody comes into this museum, we'll see who we are today.
I don't know if Katrin, I think she probably told you or not, but we are actually working on redesigning the entire exhibit. It has started a few years ago, but the permanent exhibit, this one was put in the year 2000, so it's at this point 21 years old. So to change the entire exhibit is a very time-consuming and expensive process, so it's going to be changed like piece by piece. But the process has already started. We are already working on designing a new exhibit that would reflect the community in a more accurate way than it is right now. And in the meantime, we are trying to do smaller projects. It's easier to do oral history drive than it is to build a new exhibit from scratch, essentially, right? So it's a process, but.
Oh, but this is very good. Yeah. And I know that you have to start somewhere, and I think this is very interesting because it's hard also to get things from different people. I have been asked, and I said, no, know, my things from Mexico are mine after I die, maybe. But it's hard because, you know, many times you brought all those things with you as a reminder of where you come from, and you don't want to let go. And I know that's the same with many people from many countries. So we'll show them to you, but it will be hard to build that. But maybe, you know, little by little, just like, I don't know, in a museum, you can see something from, let's say, the Titanic, because somebody donated it. But again, that's after many years. So maybe little by little, you know, you have different things from different people, you know, that have come here, that are here. But I think right now the oral interviews are a great way to see who we are here today. And, you know, any exhibitions that relate to art and culture also can portray who we are here today. Because it's not just the History Museum, really it's any museum. It can be the Orlando Museum of Art, you know, it can be the Menelo. Any of them can show little by little who we are here today. And we are, you know, that very diverse. And as I said, I think that's very, very good for the community, because you get more different talents coming together. I know somebody else may have a different opinion, but from what I have seen, you know, when you get different views to build something, it's more flexible, and I think it lasts longer because you are more flexible and you have a little bit of talent and richness that comes from different places, so you can be more creative. So no, congratulations, because it is a wonderful project. And I said, and I hope little by little, with different public libraries, museums, that also little by little reflects who we are in the community.
So you talked about, you know, like the diversity and how it may be challenging from the perspective of how the outside world, let's call it, you know, working word, how the outside world views the community. But are there any challenges within the community itself? You know, that would be, because as you mentioned, like, you're from Mexico, but you don't even represent the entire Mexico because it's so diverse. But then we may have somebody from Argentina, and they are like, you know, they just feel like, oh, we're from Argentina, like, what, we want to have our own, I don't know, organization or our own project, you know, how we're so far from Mexico, like, you know, we're so different. Are there any challenges within, you know, because I'm just trying to imagine how it would feel like in my case, you know, if we all had to come together as Europeans to form something and, you know, to create something. I bet there would be challenges between us.
There are many challenges.
How you know, how is it within the community itself? How do you work together to come up with projects, to go out and share with people who are of different, you know, ethnicity, to understand?
I have to say, with a lot of respect, because even within your own country, we are different. And they say even within Mexico, even though I know we're all Mexican, it may be hard for me to understand somebody who got a totally different background or growing up than the one I had. So I have to have respect for that person, because I may not be able to understand. Even though I can say, oh, I understand, I don't. I'm not in their shoes. So maybe, but I have to have respect and love for that person. I know that, okay, we are from the same country. We may look totally different. We may have grown totally different. There are things that we both like, because you always find something common with people from your country, and even with people from other countries. You find something common. But yes, you may be totally different. And it is respect and love that brings you together to work in something, not that you're the same. And so even with that people from your country, you will find that. And there are people who decide not to work together, and then within the same country you may find different groups and organizations, yes. And so then when you work with another country, you may find that there's no one organization representing the other country. There are many organizations, and you find one of them to work with, and then again with a lot of respect and love, and so forth, with different groups, and then to come together. And then you have to be maybe as general as possible to be able to come together with it. Certainly it's not easy. No, it's not. It really requires that, you have the heart that you want to do it, and that other people want to do it and have that same goal in their hearts to do it. And again, it's not just with something that is done with other, Latin countries or even in my same language. When I was volunteer with the PTA, when my older children were in the different public schools, I remember that it was very challenging sometimes because, the people I was with, we were so different. And I was like, well, at least we have the same goal. We have the same goal. I understood, we may not become friends because we're so different, but we are friends, different degrees, I guess, of friendship in the sense that we're working together. At least we are companions, to give another word, that we are working toward the same goal, but we don't necessarily think the same. So that does happen, and you just have to, again, work with it, with the goal in mind. I remember doing even for my older and younger daughter in the Girl Scouts, and again, nature is so important for me. I remember with my older daughter, we went to camp, and nobody knew how to make fire, and I was a little surprised that all we were going to do was sing. And I thought, after being in Boy Scouts with my son, again, I'm very conservative, and yet I believe that we all have opportunities and we should all be given opportunities. Yes, I like a guy to open the door for me, because I think that's being a gentleman, that's not being a man or a woman. And I would open the door for the person too. I don't have a problem. But I will never tell a person, don't open the door for me, I can do it. To me, that's an insult. I appreciate, that thing, that's being gentle. And I could be the doctor, and he could be the person picking up garbage. Or he can be the doctor, and I'm the person picking. It doesn't matter. That's just, things you do for society, but not because you're a man or a woman. And so when I saw that and I compared to my son being in Boy Scouts and how they learned to use guns and the bow and arrow, which I did. I learned to use guns. I learned the bow and arrow. I was a little surprised that my daughter was not learning the same as my son in Boy Scouts. So I was like, and then they couldn't make the fire. So I was like, oh. So that when I decided to leave that group, because it didn't go with, I was trying to teach my daughter, go with it. Whatever you want, I will support you. There are no like women careers and men careers. And then, after 10 years, we had another son and daughter. And the same thing happened with my daughter's group. And I was again a little surprised. I say, as nice as it is at girls, to do her nails and put flowers, I do all of that. And do all these different things. It doesn't make you a girl to do that. Like when I was working and you were telling me about makeup, I didn't wear a lot of makeup because I like to swim and play tennis. So I would swim and play tennis and then run to Citibank. Maybe some gloss, some mascara. That was it. So I was not, hair, I didn't have the time to be doing my hair. I never did. I was never a person to be in front of the mirror for 1 hour doing my curls. I'm a firm believer of the rolls that you heat and then you put them in your hair. And sometimes I'm driving with my rolls on. I'm like, sorry if I didn't have time to do it at home. But me personally, I don't have the patience to be doing it. That's not my talent. And I appreciate the person who would and their hair looks beautiful. That's not me. But that's because I wanted to swim. But that doesn't make me less of a girl. Even within a girl, there are degrees of girls. You don't have to wear skirts or dresses to be a girl. You'll be wearing pants. And you're still a girl, or heels, and you're still a girl. So, yes, we're doing all the girly things, the typical girly things, but I wanted to do more. And I was also really surprised that, and some of the moms doing more was able to, let's just go dancing by ourselves, or let's just go do other stuff ourselves. I was like, well, maybe that's what it was for them. But to me, doing more was not necessarily just, let's just be able to go in a restaurant, just girls, which is very nice, and if that's what they like. Because, there was a time when women could not even go to a restaurant by themselves without their husband, or go to the doctor without the husband. I understand that perfectly. But to me, it's also more opportunities. Why don't we do a field trip to museum? Why don't we go and see art? Why don't we go and see buildings? What else do we have here that we can explore that can help them in who they want to be? Just give them that in case that's part of the package they need to grow. And I didn't see it. So that's what I know, that it is challenging sometimes, what is defined to be or not to be. And again, and I am conservative, because there are people that are even, more, no, everything goes. So even though in my conservative world, I was like, well, we need more. let's find other places to do more things, so they're more exposed to what is going to be good for their career. And when I say exposed, and say conservative, it's because, if you look at Greeks and Romans, there was a time, many years ago, where they're too exposed to many things. And that's not what I mean. Where they could have experiences of all kinds. That's not what I mean. I know there are limits. But in terms of growth and education, I want them to be able to see. And that is open to them. Even with schooling, when, let's say, going back to my experience, my dad went to a school where it was all boys and Catholic. My mom went to a school where it was all girls and Catholic. You know what they wanted for us? Mix. Because they saw that eventually in life, that was not the best experience, that it was better that you learned how to deal with boys and girls and have respect and limits, but by dealing with it. Like I said, you learn how to go to a museum by going to it. It's not like you turn 10 and you suddenly go. No, you need modeling. So in order to have respect for each other, we had to learn to be with them. So I went to mixed school, and both girls and boys, we were encouraged to study, to do sports, but to have so much respect for each other. And we were together. And we grew up like brothers and sisters, but you better, sometimes with brothers and sisters you fight. Maybe we did, but we had to learn to forgive and be together as a group, with lots and lots of respect for each other. So going back to these different groups, sometimes you may not think the same. In school, we are all different backgrounds, different religions. When I went to school, same here. So you're going to have different religions, but you have to learn to respect and work with each other. In fact, when I was working for Citibank, I used to go to the Museum of Antropología in Mexico, anthropology, which is a beautiful museum that gives so many classes. And I love taking classes of indigenous and art. I always continue to take just separate classes here and there because I like it so much. And I remember I was taking this class of religions of the world. And he was saying that many people did not want to learn about other religions because they thought that would bring doubt to their own religion. And his opinion was the opposite, that sometimes when you learn about others, you develop a higher understanding of what you believe or who you are. It enforces who you are. It doesn't confuse you. It should enforce who you are, but it also develops respect for others. So you understand others. And I personally believe in that I understand that I am Catholic and what I believe in, but I have respect for somebody Jewish. Because I study and understand, or try, again, not in their shoes, but I have respect for who they are. And I have respect for somebody Muslim. But I have to be exposed to them, to learn and respect them. Not in my bubble. Like, no, let's just keep you in your little crystal palace so you don't know anything and you remain who you are. No, I think it's better to, with limits, again, and with education and respect, to know. And then you know who you are, and then you know who they are. Like, that's why I said maybe the word is not little communities, but groups. But then we all have things in common that then we can come together as a community. Because there's something that I have here will benefit this community, something that they have here will benefit this community. And then we'll know each other. And then just like you see in movies, what happens? West Side Story. Yep. Somebody from this community will fall in love with somebody from this community. It will happen. And so different communities may integrate, and you may have people, that shouldn't have happened. And you have someone who says, yeah, it had to happen eventually because we're all part of the greater community. And so that goes beyond the town, beyond the city, beyond the country, into the world. Because the more communications we have, the more you're exposed to other communities. Look at what happened to me. Eventually I got married with somebody from the States, and I'm living here. And maybe the way I was raised, being exposed to different communities and groups, and having respect to them, but knowing my own, and having respect for my own, helped me to be here. maybe that was part of it, to be able to take advantage then and be thankful for what I have here without forgetting who I am.
So that leads me beautifully to another question that I had, but it's a very private question, so feel free to, not to explore that that question. Because you're in a marriage with an American who was, I understand, born and raised in Pennsylvania, right?
Yes.
So how, just on a very basic, personal level, how did you find, that journey of your marriage to work, the thing that you brought into the marriage, the thing that he brought, and
not easy.
You can go as far as you feel comfortable. I realize it's a very personal question, but I think it's, especially here where there is so many marriages like that. I am in a marriage like that. It's not just, it becomes a big part of your life.
It is.
Yeah,
I think, again, when we're saying that sometimes it's easier to be exposed to things when you're a kid because you don't question them. I think that when you fall in love, when you're a teenager, early 20s, you don't question a lot of things you don't know. You don't think of the consequences, and that has to do with it, because sometimes it is easier. And I understand why people marry their own culture, their own religion, because it is easier. Sometimes when you go outside of it, there are challenges. Yes, it makes it interesting, and I think, again, just like with having friendships and knowing people, where you have to have respect and love, I think that's what makes it work with your marriage, the respect and love, because that's when you realize that what the person grew up with may be totally different to what you grew up with and the way you believe. In my personal case, I always knew that I had to marry somebody who was of my same religion, because I truly believe in my religion. So it was hard to think, how can I marry somebody who doesn't believe the same I believe? That would be very hard, because I believe in it. So I have respect for somebody who doesn't believe in it, but it's hard because they don't believe the same thing I believe. So I knew that my husband is Catholic, that I had to marry somebody Catholic. In terms of language, I spoke English. If I hadn't, I think it would have been hard, but maybe that would allow my husband to learn more Spanish. He was comfortable knowing that he didn't have to learn Spanish, even though I wanted him to, because I spoke English. And anytime we go to Mexico, everybody speaks English to him because they want to practice. I'm like, he has to learn, he has to practice, but he didn't. And where we are, he didn't really have a need for it. In fact, what he studied in college was Latin and Greek, which I had to, because students going into medicine, it's a good thing to have some Latin and Greek backgrounds. So my husband did, but he didn't learn Spanish. I wish he had. So we make it work in English. I wish he had, because I would have opened more the door for my children to speak better Spanish. I think being exposed to other people, remember what I said before, is important. My husband's family was never exposed, and they didn't want to. And it was very hard for me. I'm not the only one in their family who's alien. I have a sister-in-law who's also not from here, and it was hard for us because, and I have to say it, even though if I don't open my mouth, and if she didn't open her mouth, we look exactly like them. It wasn't a difference in color. To them, we were not the same. And that was shocking to me. And it was shocking because sometimes people think, oh, if only my skin was this color, if only my eyes. When people discriminate, no matter what color you are. It was that I come from another country, that I had an accent. That's it. I was an alien to them, no matter how I look. And that has happened not only with my in-laws, with many other people that I have met. And I have even been told, yeah, you're white, but you're not white. Well, I don't like that term. But that means that there's also a way of thinking. Well, your way of thinking is not your color. The way of thinking is where you grow up. And I will grow at your family ways. Maybe not the color ways, but the family ways. Because that you have education or not education is not being white or yellow or red. It's how you were brought up or the opportunities your parents gave you. Because if your parents maybe did not have the education, but they want you to have education because they had to work and they didn't have time, or they had no school where they live, but they want you to, that doesn't change the color. That's just the best dreams for you. That doesn't mean that they change color or they change ways. No. And so I was a little shocked with that way of thinking, that it's in the color. I personally don't agree. I think it's the circumstances that you are surrounded by in your community, that sometimes people are or behave how they behave, but through education and giving them opportunities, they have other ways and opportunities, but that didn't change who they are. It just was not given to them yet. So maybe if you have never eaten lamb, that doesn't mean that you don't like lamb or your culture doesn't eat lamb. Maybe you just never had the opportunity, or you didn't have lamb where you grew up. And then the day you try it, you like it and you eat it, but you're still who you are. You just tried a new food. I try new foods, my children try new foods. My in-laws and their family didn't. It was good. You will think, well, why did your husband marry you? Because he was exposed to foreign students in college. And I thought that was very good. It's not always good, because it can be bad, because you're exposed to other things. And I think that's what your foundation, when you believe in, is important. In my case, I had it very clear that I was not going to try drugs, even if they went around me, that I was not going to abuse alcohol. Yes, I could have a drink. And I mean, in our countries, because of the Spanish ascendancy, we drink wine. And there's not a determined age to drink wine. You can be 17 and drink wine, but you don't want to get drunk in front of people. There's a respect for drinking. And even if in fact you start drinking wine with lemon to acquire the taste. So I could drink, but I wasn't going to get drunk. I was not interested in that. I didn't think I needed a drink to talk to people or to meet somebody. No, I didn't think you need alcohol for that. I think you work on meeting people, and the more you do, the better you become of it. In case you're more introvert, you can train little by little, and within your circle of friends who you meet and what makes you comfortable. So I think that for my husband to be exposed to foreign students, it allowed him, to open his world to me. To me, it wasn't different. I knew many people from the United States and Mexico, 2 million. And I had, in fact, cousins that were married to people from the United States, so it wasn't different for me. For him, it was. For his family, it was. So that wasn't easy. And many times they were very hard with me. And again, I had to be just respectful and long, say, don't say that to me. No, it's not like that. They were shocked when they went to Mexico City and they thought they were going to see something like they sound like in an old movie. And I was like, that's not real. You don't have the Tres Amigos running around with their guns. That has never existed. That's a movie. And they were a little shocked to see beautiful houses or people with money, engineers, doctors. I was like, if you went to, let's say, Nigeria, you're not going to see people running spears. You're going to see cities too, and doctors and engineers. But maybe in a town, you will not find the same in a town as in a city. Just like here in Mexico, the same thing. There's always going to be contrast. And in some countries, more contrast. You understand, Mexico, we have more contrast between cities and towns, but you still find some contrast. So I was like, no. But again, it's just, I realized then how important it is to open your ways a little bit, because it was not easy. They didn't want me to speak Spanish. They didn't want to eat rice. They never wanted to eat what I cooked. It was not simple. It was not. And I tried, with a lot and respect and love. And eventually they traveled to Spain. But I was hoping that they would try paella and chorizo, sausage and other dishes. And they didn't. They didn't. But at least they did a little. That was already good that they traveled. Because when I first met them, they didn't even travel outside of where they lived. I was like, well, there's a lot of United States to see. And then outside of the United States are other countries. And they were like, why do we have to travel? I'm like, for pleasure. It's not because it's better or worse. It's just to know other. And if you were able to travel to other planets, I wish that you do. Go outside of your town, then outside of your state, then outside of your country, like little by little baby steps. And little by little they did. So maybe that they met me, it would help. And then my sister-in-law, it helped a little bit. To them, it helped my other brothers and sisters a lot. Or my husband's friends, because they had a lot of stereotypes. Even here, when I went to schools and I started talking, I got questions like, do you wear shoes? Or do you have washers? So sometimes the questions were so basic. That's why I thought, wow, there needs to be more education. But then I look at the textbooks. I mean, what do they show in a textbook? Like for Colombia, somebody holding the bean coffee with a traditional hat. So I was like, it's, how do we change the textbook? The schools told me, no, we already receive it. We cannot choose. So I was like, okay, if you cannot change the textbook, maybe you have people from different countries coming to talk, and that will help these children, because that's not fair. And then it makes you wonder, right? I mean, I'm from Mexico City, a humongous city, the capital of Mexico, the second place with the most museums after London. So I'm lucky. So because we have so many Americans, and even in school we had Americans teaching English, maybe I got a better perspective of the States. But I'm going to think that maybe in some other places they think of the States as a cowboy, maybe. And they want to find, the cowboy hat, even in Alaska or in Florida or in New York, without understanding that's just from Texas. So I'm not saying that it doesn't happen with our countries too, it may happen. But that's when I think that when you travel and you go to these different countries, you bring a little bit of yourself to show others that there's much more than they think. And I think that's what happened, at least with my husband. We open a little more of things to do, where even though in our household, your father is supposed to be like the first person. My father never acted like that. He always said it's my dad and my mom. So they took decisions together. But because we were in a very conservative country, because even down from Mexico City, it is very conservative. Yes, there were things that my mom could not do without checking with my father. And yet, I didn't hear about my mom not being able to go, let's say, to the doctor without my dad. So there were things that surprised me a little bit, or, that when women could not go to the doctor without their husbands, that I guess that changed faster for me because I'm from a city, and in Pennsylvania, they were from a smaller town. So there were things that shocked me a little bit, or they wanted me to be Mrs. Kevin Andrekovich. I said, no, no. I'm Beatriz Gonzalez Padilla Andrekovich. Gonzalez for my dad, Padilla for my mom. I don't have more names because they just gave me one. But, my father and my mom had to come together to make me. So both last names are important. I will never drop any. That's who I am. And then I have my husband's last name. Okay, so in the license we cannot fit that, so we're going to put your marriage name. Fine. But in my passport, I have Beatriz Gonzalez Padilla Andrekovich, because that's all who I am. And in Mexico, as you get married, you do anything, you keep the last names. Because guess what? And it's still a problem here. When you get married, if you change your last name, what happens to everything else you had? You have to change it. So let's say you already own a house with your name. You have to change it. Let's say your license. You have to change it. Your passport. You think that's fair? I don't think so. So I think that you should be able to add it without changing everything you already had. Because it's understood that you have one more, but it doesn't take away what you had already. You have properties, your certificate from school. It's with your dad and mom's name, not your husband's name. So that created such a big problem that at least in Mexico they have understood that. So because we had to change all these papers when we get married. No, you're still who you are, and then you add the last name. But for my in-laws, that was hard. I said, well, I'm sorry it's hard for you, but I'm not Kevin Andrekovich. I'm not. I am Beatriz Gonzalez Padilla Andrekovich, with a lot of respect. And I speak Spanish, and my children will speak Spanish, and we eat rice and beans in this house, just like we'll have Chinese food, and we'll have Italian food, we'll have anything that they can try and open their minds and meet people from different countries. Yes. And yes, we have values that we follow, but speaking Spanish is not a value, it's culture. So yeah, there are things, yeah. Oh, I was saying, the dad and mom, going to the Bible, I had to show them, it says here, husband and wife will leave the parents and make a new household, a new family. Because they said that I shouldn't open my mouth. My husband had to tell me everything I did, where to go, what to do. I was like, no, it's not like that. So that was also different, that again, I was coming from being from a city to somebody from a small town here in Pennsylvania. And it could have happened the other way around. They could have been from a big city, let's say from New York City, and I could have been from a little town, it would have been different. Or they could have been from a little town and me from New York City, and it would have been different. So not everything was because we were from different countries. Some things I think were because we were just from different, the way we grew up. And when I was there, I also saw that there were churches that had the Mass in Polish. And I asked them, the Mass is in Polish. Have you ever criticized that it should be in English? Since you say that I shouldn't speak Spanish. So we're like, oh no, Polish is okay. I was like, why is Polish okay and Spanish isn't? Why can you have a church where they have a Mass in Polish, but they refuse to visit Miami because people spoke in Spanish? I mean, how is that different? You may go to another town where that can happen and maybe it's Russian or it's Japanese. And that was interesting that they will have respect for one group and not for everybody. And they were not of Polish descendants, by the way. You may say, oh, maybe because they were Polish. No, because that's who they grew up with. So they have respect for that.
Because the last name, it sounds Eastern Europe. It's not Polish. I got that because it's not. Do you know where it comes from?
Yes, I know that it's Slavic from Czechoslovakia, part of Russia. And you know how those limits were always being changed, the geographical lines.
That's what I was thinking, because it doesn't sound Polish.
No,
but
it
definitely sounds Eastern European with the Slavic descendants.
That's what I know, that it's Slavic and it's Czechoslovakia, where they were from. But again, that part of Czechoslovakia at some point could have been Yugoslavia, at some point could have been Russia. But I know, as far as I know, and the way it's written, it's not the way it's always been written. We went to the cemetery, and when people were coming, the letters were different, so the people in Ellis Island wrote it down the way it sounded. So they didn't always write it the same. So when we were in the cemetery, it's written in so many different ways. And some people in my husband's family say Andrekovich, some say Andrekovich, so they pronounce it even different.
It could probably be written with C with a little thing over it.
And with a Y somewhere
or
there.
CZ. Because it's either Andrekovich or Andrekovich. That's like.
And then they had an Andre. In some cases, in some of the Andre. Also, oh yeah, there were so many different ways of writing it. So I understand that it's not, again, they use different letters, so it was not always written the same. But remember, we were saying this, how you grow. So they grew surrounded with families, with Polish families. So they had a respect for them, because they grew up with Polish, even though they weren't. And I would have thought, being exposed to somebody that is not Jew would have given you the model to have respect for other groups, to not look at other groups as higher or lower, and yet they did. So that's why I said it's not always then, that because of being exposed to one thing, it will develop into exposure or respect for everybody. So sometimes maybe you have to go a little beyond, or maybe that was just their case, where one thing should have represented everybody, but it didn't. But it was a challenge, yes. But again, they're my husband's parents. I love my husband. And yes, there was also, even simple things as not at the time you eat. To tell you the truth, I always wonder, why do people say they eat dinner at 5? Tell me, who gets home at 5? When you work, you're never home at 5. No, I mean, even if you leave at 5, you don't get home till later. And nobody lives at 5, my husband. Nobody lives at 5. So I always wonder, or, eating lunch at 12, unless you started early, breakfast at 7. But what if you started later? What if you start at 9? 12 may be too soon. Maybe you eat at 2. So even that, I think it's flexible. It's not like this is the way it is. When I was growing up, my dad always picked us up from school. And again, talking about the things that your parents do for you. Again, we're from a city. In towns, people do more. I go to pick up the children, I go home, I have this, maybe I relax, and then I go back to work. Not many times in the city, and yet for my parents, it was very important to grow up as a family. And I'm sure my dad sometimes could have been, with a judge or with someone, an attorney, and yet he wanted to pick us up every day. Yeah, there were some exceptions where somebody else had to because he was tied up, but I was 99% of the time, he was picking us up. And on the way home, he was talking to us, putting music, talking about different things. My dad had an amazing memory. So as we were driving, I was always going like, oh, Dad, what about that monument? What museum? He will always give you the whole history about the place. And I have to take today, whenever I go anywhere, I Google like who built it, when, how, why, because I grew up with that. So he will be giving us all that on the way home. We will get home. And then my mom will have all these different dishes. She didn't know all of them, but with my grandma, she learned some others because remember, she was from another state. And we were exposed to so many delicious dishes that she cooked. We had help at home. So my mom was not clean the house. She was able to do, by herself. We had other people helping. She was able to do other things. And then we had again the piano, the swing. And then my dad will go back to work. And so even in our household, that's not the same as everybody, but we had something that we grew up with. So going back, with my in-laws, to me, I asked my husband, if you can, try to eat home. And I remember we were in Fort Myers. He worked close to the house that he was able to come and eat together. So we tried to do that. But at night, he used to come late. And what I did is I would wait for him, and then when he came home, we would eat together. Because I knew that was important to eat together, with the children, to keep the family unit. That is important. Because I grew up seeing that does bring you together. Now that we live here, when we moved to Lake Mary, that was not possible. My husband worked far away, that it was not possible. So then at night, I would pick up the children from school, and we would immediately eat. I wouldn't have snacks, I would have the food. So even if it was, 4 o'clock, when they're in middle school, 4:30 we were eating. If it was 2 o'clock when they were in elementary, 2:30 we were eating. So I was flexible to whenever we came back from school to eat the meal, with the soup, the food, the main dish, the dessert. And then we will wait 5 hours, and then my husband will come, so it was 8 or 9, then we will have another dinner. So we can have 2 different dinners. Just because I saw the importance of being together at the table where everybody shared. Now, today, sometimes he has to work longer, and he does not always, sometimes he's very tired, and so he may sit for 5 minutes and not have food because he already ate. Or with my older children not being, with us, I have only the younger children are with us, because the older children they're already finished college and are working. They may not have the same as the older children do, but I try as much as possible that we do. We do not sit in front of the TV eating. That I don't do. And I know that at some point in the United States, people did. They will eat watching TV. We never did. And I don't. I'm like, no, we eat at the table and we talk. So you talk. Let's keep that, because that's important for the family, to talk about different experiences. So to answer, but I think going back to college and going back to high school, I think it's good when students, you're talking about foreign students, when there are foreign students in your school, when there are foreign people at work, when there are foreign people in your family, I would say take advantage of that to open your horizon of knowing others, other ways of thinking, other ways of doing, other foods, other cultures. I think they're a great window to enrich your life, absolutely.
Where is your sister-in-law from?
Finland.
Oh, Finland. So, again, another culture. I was thinking if she's maybe from,
No, it's so very different. And in her case, even with Spanish, as soon as you go, with Spanish, I was like, say they want me to speak Spanish, I was like, you don't know if your daughters will meet somebody who speaks Spanish, and they did. So that's what I mean. It's like sometimes the nurse say no. You don't know where life is going to take you. I would say sometimes you don't know why, when you encounter things in life, sometimes it's later in life that you go, I should have, or that's why. Because it is funny, but they seem to form part of whatever your life is later. And this was like they were announcing it or preparing you for it. Like I said, I'm surprised, even, when I was growing up, there were children from other countries in our school. In fact, there were Americans in our school and they learned Spanish. And one thing we did is we didn't change their name. Whether they were Michael or Edward or Tom, we didn't change their name. We didn't say, oh, Miguel or no. Because, I tell that to my husband still today. He will not say Beatriz, he says Beatriz. I'm like, that's not my name. And I understand when people cannot pronounce it. I'm like, okay, you can call me Beatriz. Because I know they may not be able to pronounce Beatriz. But, it's just interesting because it's not my name. My name is Beatriz, it's not Beatriz. But I understand, I try to be respectful, understand, okay, it may be hard for them to pronounce it, or to them, that is the name in English, so that's the name they prefer to use. But I don't know, sometimes it makes me think of people with very, very different names, and that someone will tell them, oh, I cannot pronounce your name, so I'm going to call you Tom. To me, that's a lack of respect. So I think that as much as you can, you should try to say the name of the person. But again, remember, our vocal cords are kind of fixed at our age. So it is true when it's hard for people at our age to learn another language, it is hard. It's very hard to lose your accent, very hard to pronounce certain things. And understanding that's why I say it's okay. I understand you're not disrespecting me. I understand you cannot say it, so okay, call me Beatriz. Because I understand that. But if they were to tell me, well, I cannot say Beatriz, I'm going to call you Maria. No, that's not my name. Because sometimes people think that everybody's called Maria. And I'm sorry, but that is interesting that because of Virgin Mary, many times in our names we say Maria. Or many times for guys we say Juan or Jose. But we do not have the order of first name and middle name in Spanish. You put names together as they flow. And that happens in England too. You may have 5 names for one person. So it's not the first name that you're called by. In the 2 or 3 names that you have, your parents may choose one, but they put them in writing in the way they flow better. So, let's say with Maria, you may be called Maria Alejandra, or Maria Patricia, or Maria Isabel, but they call you Isabel, or Alejandra, Patricia, not Maria. The Maria was an companion, but maybe that is your name, Maria, so they will call you Maria. And that's why I have tried many times also to explain to people, no, it's not our first name because we don't go by that. It's just the way it flows. The same, you can be Jose Alejandro, Jose Alberto, Jose Roberto, but your name is Roberto, Alejandro, or Eduardo. It's not Jose. But maybe they do want to call you Jose. And you may be Jose like twice. So that's just something interesting about names. And that's why sometimes we put hyphens, because sometimes people think that our first last name is our middle name. But no. We happen to know that we have father and mother.
So then when, for your children, you are here, so it may be a little bit different, but in Mexico, for the children, which name, because then the mother has 2 names after mother and father, and then the father has also 2 names, right? You
use the fathers, yeah. Eventually the mothers is dropped. Good question, yes. That means that my father, in his case, he was Gonzalez Garcia Alonso, so I took the Gonzalez. My mom was Padilla Sanchez, I took the Padilla. Yes, if not, you will have so many. So yes, little by little, it is the fathers that is kept. So what happens with some people, they want to have a son, because it's the son that keeps the last name. Because the girl's last name is the one that is eventually dropped. And some last names have disappeared because of that, because eventually if they didn't have sons, the last name disappeared. But you know what, and this is interesting, that happens also with DNA. When people find like their DNA studies and like, oh, I'm related like to this queen or to that person. Yes, we are, because it's interesting. But let's say that you started with 1 million DNAs, eventually the pyramid goes down the other way like this, the opposite. Some DNAs disappear, some families do disappear, not just the last name, the DNA. Like, how Darwin said survival of the fittest. I don't know if it's the fittest, but it's survival of just some DNAs. Not all of them are kept. They did a study of an indigenous group here in the States in North Carolina, and they found that the people surviving today from that whole tribe only come from 2 women. All the other DNA is gone. So then when you do those DNA studies and you find out that you're related to all these different peoples too, you're related to them. And some who have died, you are not related to them because that line, it's not that you were not related, you are related, but that DNA has disappeared. You understand what I'm saying? So you're not related to one person only, you are related to thousands, but you're not mentioned because they have disappeared, so it's only a few are left. So then those of us who are here today all go back to just those who still exist, because these are gone, so they're not kept anymore. Isn't that interesting? And that's what we all like, kind of like are a family, going back many years. Yes.
I have a few more questions, but I need to go to the bathroom.
Go ahead.
If we can take a short break.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
If you need to go too, okay, I will. Okay, yep, recording.
I was going to tell you that when I was in college, I was able to meet a family. They had a program with the church, and I went to church even though my parents weren't there to tell me go to church. I believe in going to church, and there were host families where you could spend, like, let's say, Thanksgiving with. Because we don't have things here in Mexico. We don't have pilgrims in Mexico. So we were able, or the 4th of July, we have our own independence, September 16th from the Spanish. So we were able to celebrate things or see them, have other experiences with an American family. That was very nice. I had a very nice family. They got Breskis and they had horses, and I loved it. But they were able to travel, but they had friends maybe, or I met other people who didn't have the travel experience. And I have to tell you, so when people travel, it does open your minds to see what other countries are like, and not the stereotype that's many times given here. And there are people who, even though they have not traveled, they have read, or they have friends who open their minds. Because I met people who are very open-minded, to be nice to other people without having been in other countries. So, the way you grow affects you, but also your personality, your will, and what you are like, to meet other people. And what we're saying also is that being from a city is different from being in a town. When I went to Pennsylvania, I was exposed to more rural people, from towns. When I was in Mexico, I live in a city, in a humongous city. And so I know that, my life in the city is not the same as in a town. And so when I was in Pennsylvania, what I experienced in different towns, or what I saw in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, is not the same as Washington, D.C. or New York City, that are bigger cities. I have to compare Mexico City to a bigger city. Even when people ask me, how much you pay for a house? I was like, it's not the same to compare a town to a city. So even within the same country, a city in a state that is not the capital is not the same in terms of how much things are or how much you get paid. So it totally depends on where you are. And I was going to say, but I think it's still good that you are able to meet other people, to open, how you think, because I see that with my husband, because he was able to meet people from other places in college and travel. I think that opened his mind, and it also allows you to do things that you may enjoy. He enjoyed very much going to Mexico City when my parents were alive. He really enjoyed it. I mean, he liked the way everybody treated him, the experiences we had, the travel we did. He very much enjoyed it. And sometimes people were surprised. I was like, no, he likes it. So maybe somewhere in his personality, like we said, who knows, who was in his family that liked to travel and appreciate, because he truly enjoyed it. And I appreciate that he enjoyed a different culture. That he enjoyed, I don't know, if we stopped, when this is funny, in a highway and stopped somewhere to eat, and they're making it right in front of you, and he ate it, and sometimes he was like, is this safe? I'm like, yeah, you can eat it, no problem. Or even, the typical drink the water. I was like, it's not because water is bad, it just has a different bacteria, and your stomach may not be prepared for it. So I always encourage bottled water. Even here, when I came to live here, I didn't drink the water from the faucet either. I would get sick because my bacteria in my stomach is different. And for instance, one 4th of July, we spent in Atlanta. My husband got sick from the hot dogs he ate here because they had been out for a long time without being refrigerated. That didn't happen in all the places we stopped by, even in all these highways in Mexico and out. So it's really the bacteria that you have, in this case, we're in the States, but those hot dogs were outside too long. So they did get bacteria, and my husband they'll get sick. So you have all those experiences in many different places, but I think it's just what you appreciate and you go with it. And different people have different experiences, right? You know, the person who went to school with you may have a totally different experience. And again, it's from your same hometown. In my case also, my husband sometimes will ask me like, do you know how to make this dish or that dish? Because the cuisine in Mexico is very varied, very extensive, and is one of the cuisines that is known all over the world. You know, and then also in Mexico, we don't only take the cuisine with us, we take our art, our culture, we take everything. So we make like little Mexicos everywhere around the world. So my husband assumed that I must have been a very good cook, right? I must know how to make all these different foods from all these different states. I was like, no, you know, I live in Mexico City, so I know more about like where I grew up, the food that we eat, but I don't know how to cook all of it because I was working. And cooking all these dishes takes time, takes hours. I was like, if I'm working, I don't have the time to be making all of that. So no, I didn't make handmade tortillas. I went and bought them. Even today, you know, I made some handmade for him to be happy. And then I was like, sorry, I'm going to buy them. I'm going to buy a lot of things already made because I have little time to make dinner. And I'm going to try to make it as varied as I can. But I was working, I was not cooking. But somebody else maybe even went to school with me, maybe learned how to cook all these different things. But we're in the same school and yet we're different. And then imagine comparing me from a city to another city in another state to a town. We all have different experiences. And that's what I mean, that when you meet one person, it's very hard that that person really represents your country. Or like the way I think is the way that everybody in Mexico thinks. No, I'm just sharing one little piece of, you know, of my family and of my whole country. But yeah, it's very hard really to try to have one person like be the stereotype for everybody. I think talking and meeting people helps to see that yeah, there's so much more to learn and to know. And somebody's bad experience may be somebody's good experience. You know, we meet all kinds of people. And well, the good thing is that you can, every day is a new day, so then you can meet somebody new that changes maybe your experience of people from different places. And that even if they're from your same country, you may not get along. Or even if they speak Spanish, you may not get along. But one thing that I have seen, sadly, and which, you know, again, I'm here and that's why I'm talking about Mexico, is that even people told me, no, don't say you're Mexican, that poor Mexico, the country next door, is looked down upon, and that shouldn't be. And I hope that through this I change that. Many things that I do, that I share, are so you see that we are a wonderful country. Even if I represent a little piece, that we are good people, that we are hardworking, that is not good to stereotype, that you find everybody in a society, educated, non-educated, you know, that you either do fruits or plants, you pick them up, or you can be a doctor, engineer, but you could also be a bad person. There are thieves in every country. But you've never had someone from Mexico put a bomb to kill anybody. I think that, thank God, has not happened. But that, you know, the bad experience with a person should not be a stereotype for everybody from that country. And, but it happens. And that I have seen even, you know, with other Latin people, you asked me before, that is a challenge because I have seen people from other Latin countries, someone say, oh, no, don't think I'm Mexican. I'm like, wow, that is not bad. But then I have seen people that go, oh my gosh, my best friends are Mexican, a lot of people from Mexico. So I guess it just all depends on who you meet and then how you are. Because maybe something that somebody likes about me, maybe the same thing as somebody dislikes. So nobody is a gold coin, we say. So. But that's why this is so interesting, that the more you meet different people and we share, the better understanding we will have. And I truly think it's for the goal of having respect, of integrating, of making a better place, as challenging as it can be. You remember I was telling you about school, like we had children asking me like washers and shoes. That is not so. However, what we do have is there many things like, you know, needlework and making clothes still from scratch and food from scratch. There are many things that in some places have disappeared that we still have. And there's some things that you lose when you come here. For instance, I couldn't bring my credit card. I had to start from scratch here. I was nobody. I remember my first card was a Macy's card for $100, and then I opened one in Dillard's, and then because the one from my husband was an extension of his credit, but I understood that I had to make my own credit. So some things like that were like, wow, it doesn't transfer. If you're an attorney in Mexico, you cannot work here. The law is totally different. If you're a doctor, yes, you can. But in some places, let's say in Colorado, they take you as you come. In places like Florida, they want you to repeat all these other classes. So it depends. Engineers, usually because there are not as many engineers, they take you as you come. But interesting, right? Like when I started, I was happy that I started finance. That is something that I can work. I was able to work with Canada, United States, or Mexico, and I didn't have to do anything different to be able to work. So that is interesting also to consider why sometimes you may have people from some country that are something that from another. Sometimes when people have to leave a country because of a war or because of communism, you may have all kinds of people from that country, whether they pick up garbage or they're a doctor, come from that country. In some cases, like in Mexico, thank God we haven't that hardship. So many times you have people that work the lands that come into the States, and many times it's because you didn't have anybody else doing it and they were the ones willing to do it, or maybe they were not able to go to school, but they want to make a better life for the children. We're the country next door, so you may want to see something you may want. And the border, you don't know the border until you go to the border. The border is back and forth all day long. There are people from the States who work in the States but live in Mexico. There are people from the States who also live and work in Mexico. So you have everything going both ways. And in some instances, you have to remember, why did people come the first time to the States? All these immigrants to make a better life. So whether you're from Mexico, from any country, really, you're trying to make a better life. And I know that you have to limit it. I mean, in Mexico, imagine, we're next to you. We're the sandwich. No, we're not the sandwich, we're the ham inside the sandwich. Because we have the States here and everybody else here. And then we have the rest of the world. And if they cannot come directly to the States, sometimes they try to come through Mexico. And we understand. And we also try to limit and give jobs because we tell people, not everybody's going to make it into the States. There are a limit of people. Not everybody can come. It will be impossible for an economy to hold everybody. But we understand that people have a desire to do better. And that's why I understand when people come from Mexico to the States with a desire to do better, or sometimes, their job is needed. Many times, if somebody from Mexico was not there to work, to grow fruits and vegetables, you will have nobody. There are places that have nobody working the land. In fact, in Puerto Rico right now, a group of people from Mexico were taken to work, the land, to do the crops, because nobody else was doing it. So sometimes you do have groups of people that come to do it. When once upon a time you had people from China doing the railroads because they knew how to and they were doing it, because maybe you didn't have anybody else. Either they didn't have the expertise or they didn't want to do it. And it had to be done. You need, communication ways. So right now, you need to grow food. And, when somebody sees a better place to live, why wouldn't they want to or want that for their children? But that doesn't mean that, the person's bad or make a bad stereotype. At the end of the day, to me, the hope is always that their children will be exposed to the children of so many other groups and will follow that they're here to make a better life, and they will take advantage of having those opportunities and do better. Does that always happen? No. You will have people who will take really good advantage of opportunities and do so much better. But you will have people who will not take advantage of the opportunities and be stuck. Or you will have people that will not behave, and maybe do things that are wrong, and people will have stereotypes of those communities. But that happens everywhere, in every country. So that you have people to do all doesn't mean that everybody's going to. In a basket of apples, you will have an apple that rots. I mean, that's with human nature too. Not everybody's going to follow the same. Because at the end of the day, we're free to follow who we are. But it's interesting when people appreciate it, and I appreciate that when people open their hearts, open their minds, that we understand each other, and that makes a difference. And I encourage people always, open your minds, open your hearts, because we're becoming more and more diverse, especially with communications, with our phones. We are reaching the world. So more and more we will travel to more places, we will meet more people, and it's good to know how to deal with it. Your company may have subsidiaries in so many countries, and you may have to travel with your company. So it helps if if you look at it in a positive way, that you're going to meet other people, other countries, and you will do better. So it helps to me if you have that experience in college or as a little kid in school. So I hope that really that all of this has opened our hearts and our minds. I appreciate, my husband very much, because, he was able and willing to do that. And that's how with you, with me, and with many of us, that's how we have integrated, right? By bringing different people from different countries into our families and understanding each other and wanting to be better together, happier together. So thank you again for this opportunity
it's my pleasure.
To share my country.
It really is. So, is there something that you would say that will differ Mexico from other countries that that we would here consider as Latin countries? Is there, and you can really treat it as open, like it may be something very little or some idea. Like, is there anything that you think that would, just highlight Mexico in a...
Well, I would say one thing is we're very proud of our country, of who we are. And, sometimes people wonder why people have the flag from their countries. I have to tell that, when people in the United States go to other countries, they have the flags too, and they're very proud, and they live together. If you see like the army going into other countries, they usually live together. Even communities, the American communities we have, live together. So people should never be surprised. That's human nature, that people live in communities, remember? And then the child from this community knows the child of that community, and through friendship or marriage, the communities start to integrate, but not to be surprised about that. Once upon a time, when people came here from different countries, they had the flag from their country, and they were proud of it. So never look at that when people, like, if I have my Mexican flag, it's not an insult. I appreciate the United States. I'm very thankful. I have the American flag too, but I am Mexican until I die. When I ask my husband, where are you from? I'm Pennsylvania. We have lived here 27 years. He's from Pennsylvania. It's who you are. So to remind people, it's just our ancestry. You are who you are. That we're different, maybe sometimes we are very, very proud of who we are. So we're not going to forget who we are. Maybe there are other countries who tend to forget. We are next door, so that makes us different, that we're so close that we can go back and forth more often. And that makes us different also from other countries around the world, that we can go back and forth maybe easier than if you come from so far away. Our Spanish, even though it's the same language, remember, it has different sayings and accents that other Latin countries, when you ask me to compare it to other Latin countries. But that doesn't mean that we all speak the same. Sometimes people will go, and I go, oops, I don't talk like that. And that doesn't mean that it's bad or good. It just means that different people from different places. Even when I speak English, or my husband, let's say, he doesn't speak like somebody else. And if somebody else uses bad words, well, my husband doesn't. Or maybe the things that he says, as simple as he says pop, and here you say soda. Little things like that. People speak different from different places, even within the same country. So I will say that we all speak different, and other Latin countries do. I think it's just that because you have met more people from Mexico, because we're next door, people may be exposed to just a certain group, and that may be different from other countries. They say from Colombia and Venezuela, you have more professionals coming because of the economic situation. So you meet engineers, doctors, and sometimes people think, oh, then you don't have engineers and doctors in Mexico. I'm like, yes, it's just that we haven't had to escape our country. Thank God we don't have the same problems, so we haven't left. Just maybe some people like me because of marriage, but not out of necessity. But if something like that happened, yeah, you will get to meet all these other people that sometimes you see in soap operas, and people ask me, oh, are they also Mexican? Yes, we're all colors and shapes, yes, we're all Mexican. That we have very good technology, very good. We, in terms of TV, radio, engineering, we are very good at it, and we have opened the doors to help other Latin countries. Again, because we're next door to the United States, many times people come to Mexico and we help them before they jump to the United States. And that makes us different from other countries because they're not next to the United States. So they're not looked as a window to the United States as we are. So that makes us different. That first they come into the States, then to Mexico, and then to the United States. Our food, remember, is very different. The food is very different from other Latin countries. And we have our folkloric dances and dresses. And because we have made a big effort in keeping it, we are different from other countries that have melted more and where that has disappeared. And remember that, because sometimes when people tell you here, assimilate maybe to understand the ways, but it doesn't mean to stop being yourself, or it shouldn't be. Because if you disappear thinking that's assimilate, oh, I'm just going to wear my jeans or my white shirt pretending that that's how you're going to fit, and forget everything else, then your culture will disappear. And that has happened in some countries where, in terms of, or with the goal of being modern, they have pushed the art and culture from the past behind until they disappear, until the last person spoke that language or knew how to do a certain thing. And it could be working with wood a certain way, or stitching a certain way, or cooking a certain way. And it eventually disappeared because nobody else did it, because everybody wanted to be an engineer, everybody wanted to work in a factory. So you may lose that. In Mexico, we have made a big effort in maintaining it. Sometimes people look at it and go, oh, we have to go and modernize that town. Oh, we have to go and teach them how to use a sewing machine, stop stitching by hand. Oh, they have to stop cooking with their hands, they should have pans. And I'm like, wait, maybe they don't want to, maybe they have made an effort to keep it that way. And even though they could, make sure you find out first if they want to. Maybe they have made an effort not to, or will disappear. Right? And so we're different in that sense, that and it's hard. It's not easy, because again, when you keep that means that you are not modern, that you may not have a stove, that you may not have things that are more modern, because you're trying to keep this like your ancestors. So it's a challenge. But in Mexico, I see that compared to other Latin countries, we still have many indigenous groups, and we're all Mexican, still doing things the way they did, still wearing their folkloric outfits, still doing the dances, still keeping their languages, their indigenous languages, besides the Spanish language. So that makes us different. Now, remember also this, that some groups have disappeared, and some things you don't have everything here. Sometimes people would like to see, like, the dresses. I made a big exhibition of dresses. If these dresses were made here, I'm like, no, I don't make them. And if that person who makes the dresses has not come to live here, or that person who makes that food has not come to live here, and not everybody does, then you will not have that here. You'll have it in our countries only. And that person living there may have a business of doing that and is happy doing that, and we have to appreciate it, not offered, like, oh, well, I can buy something in a store here, I don't know, a dress for, I don't know, $50, so I'm going to offer you $50 for that dress. No, that is handmade, and the work it takes, it may take 6 months to finish it. That may take $500 or $1,000 to make that dress. Even if you look at the person, you think, yes, but she's not a doctor and engineer. Yes, but her talent is as important. And if she doesn't keep that talent, it may disappear. Now, her daughter may want to do the same, or her son. Or maybe her son and daughter may want to be an engineer or doctor, right? And that talent may disappear. And some talents, and some crafts have disappeared that way. But I am happy that we still find it, and we still try to show them, and I hope that people appreciate them. But they're so varied that as you travel in Mexico, you find so much that is different. Sometimes when we're driving here in Florida to different towns and different cities, my children have said, Mom, it looks the same, it looks the same, it looks the same. And one thing talking about Mexico is that it looks different. You're in a different place because they do look different. Aside from the modernistic, aside from the buildings, aside from that, we try that even the buildings, the way we build is not cookie cut. is not shoebox after shoebox, but to give it some flavor, even in architecture, that not everything looks the same. And I think that we are very proud of keeping that. And so that makes us different. And oh, they're gonna say I'm bragging, but Miss Mexico is Miss Universe, so that makes us different. Because Miss Universe is Mexican and they could only choose one person and she's from Mexico, so congratulations to Andrea. Yes, Masai, oh. Yes, this year. Yes, that we're very, very happy that she was chosen, yes, as Miss Universe. And you know, and it's very interesting because she is beautiful in her way, and that opens the door that in her color, in her eyes, she is Mexican, and she doesn't follow the stereotype in Mexico that people had of Mexico, but at the same time, she does not represent all of Mexico. She could not represent the European, the Indian, the African. How can one person represent all of that? But she represents one part of Mexico, and therefore she's Mexican, and we're very proud and very happy that she won and that she's so talented. She's an engineer. Yes, it seems that that's one thing that somehow, you know, I asked this educational person, this education group, I said, you know, I'm just curious, when children whose parents did not study and choose a career, could you tell me if it's very varied, or is there a certain career that children choose or are good at? And it seems that engineering is very strong in Mexico. And I don't know, it just, I mean, we have everything, we have doctors and everything, but it just seems that just our brains are very like engineering-like. And you know what, when you look at the different pyramids and all the different things that were made in Mexico, people were able like to keep food when they didn't have refrigerators, or make that food travel from place to place and make ways for them to go. They had to have that engineering mind, so it must be in our DNA. And I was also understanding the groups that are famous, that are known here, like the Aztecs and the Mayas, the way it was has disappeared. And that's why we make an effort now to keep it, because you know, when the Spaniards came to Mexico in 1521, the Mexico they found, the pyramids, that's has all disappeared. They destroyed everything and built buildings and monuments with the same rocks. What the Indians did at that moment, the Aztecs, was covered the pyramids to make them look like hills, so they would stop destroying them. But that has disappeared. The same with the Mayas. They left. So the Mayas, you see today, are the descendants, but they were not the original ones that were there. All that has not been kept. What we have today, a lot of it is a mix of different groups, whether Europeans with Africans, with indigenous. You tend to find more like the group of an indigenous person that has not been affected or mixed when you go far away into the mountains. And that happens in our Latin countries too. But as you come close to a town or to the city, yeah, like we said, eventually the different communities are together, start to mix and integrate. So then you will not find like they're just this or just that. But you still find groups that have been kept that way for many years. And like I said, many times they choose to be like that, not because nobody comes or nobody cares. No, they have made that decision because they don't want to disappear. Because sometimes when you come modern, you lose a lot of that. And that's one of those, that many times I wear, my bracelet, my earrings, because I don't, in Mexico, growing up in Mexico City, I didn't wear the traditional clothing like in some towns they do even for every day. We did wear the one to dance, it is just to dance, or some gala for different festivities. But I try to keep some of what I'm sure like long time ago. Somebody in my family, it's in my blood, and maybe that's why I like it so much.
It's beautiful. It's just